And to those in the gallery, we're calling our meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel, on Facebook Live, on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions, though not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. So we're going to start tonight with public comments from the from the board. Do we have any public comments this evening from the board? All right.
There is a pancake breakfast tomorrow morning, 8 to 11. I think I have that range right. Yep.
And it's 8 to 10.
All right.
8 to 10?
It's not 11.
8 to 10?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
At?
8 to 10.
Oh, yes, at the Eagle House. Yes.
8 to 10 at the Eagle House Pancake
Like at 8.
Breakfast. Thank you. Anything to talk about? All right. No public comments from me, from you, town manager?
Just that the special town meeting is November 15th at 7 p.m. at the middle school, high school auditorium.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Do we have any public comments this evening from the public? Do we have any online? All right. Announcements. Any announcements this evening? No? No announcements? All right. All right, communications from other boards. We received a communication from the Conservation Commission regarding 35 Leominster Road. So the gist of this communication was that there's a property that we're being advised is available for sale at 35 Leominster Road. The Conservation Commission took a look at it. They responded. The gist of their response was that they're not interested in the town purchasing the property for conservation purposes. But I just want to also provide the opportunity for the board, since we did receive this request, to purchase some land if there's next steps or what we'd like to do with that.
Mr. Chair, I'll just comment that the reason this was coming out of chapter, that's why it was potentially being offered to us. It wasn't like we look at every piece of property that's for sale in town, but this one was coming out of chapter and they offered it to us.
All right. So perhaps what we should do is put on a future agenda for us to have a discussion about that. If there's a municipal interest in the property, when we can discuss it at that time. We're also waiting for Open Space Committee to respond. Have you received a response from them yet? No? All right. So we'll wait for Open Space Committee to respond. That was a little weird. All right, we'll wait for Open Space Committee as well to respond, and then we'll go from there. All right. So we do have some appointments and reappointments tonight. We also have 7:10, so we're a little early for that. So I want to go ahead and jump to interviews, appointments, reappointments, and resignations to the town manager.
I'll ask the chief to come forward. And there are 3 things on the agenda. One, a resignation of full-time police officer Nick Marino, and that's effective October 12th. And the ratification of Paul Theodullo as a full-time police officer, effective October 12th, and George Tibbetts to reserve officer, effective October 12th.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be present again tonight and present 2 officers to you. I would also like to thank Officer Nick Marino, who has submitted his resignation. He's accepted a position with the Acton Police Department. Nick has served us very well since his tenure here. He has a long history in town. His father was the former chief of police here, and his father served on the board with many of you here. I'm sorry to see him go. I am sure that wherever he goes, he'll be successful. He was a great addition, and it's with a heavy heart that I had to accept that resignation. Nick, thank you. Thank you for being here. With that being said, we had an immediate opening because of this, and we were interviewing for our 10-year plan. During that process, we interviewed 7 candidates for the open position that we're looking at in January. One of the candidates was our reserve officer, who came out to be one of the top candidates, and had him here before you back in May. We weren't surprised that he would be the top candidate when he came out. I'm pleased to recommend Reserve Officer Paul Theodoulou to the appointment of a full-time officer. I'd just like to go back a little bit and reiterate some of the stuff that we had found with him and a little bit of a background on him. As previously stated, Officer Theodoulou grew up in the city of Fitchburg, graduating from Fitchburg High School in 2007. Shortly after graduation, Officer Theodoulou enlisted in the Army National Guard, serving until being honorably discharged in 2018. During his time of service, Officer Theodoulou obtained the rank of sergeant and had received several commendations and awards. While in the service, Officer Theodoulou unit was activated and deployed to Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. Shortly after that, in 2015, he was hired by the Fitchburg Police Department, where he attended the basic recruit course in Reading, graduating in the 23rd ROC in 2015. In 2020, Officer Theodoulou elected to leave Fitchburg PD as a result of living in Townsend, as well as working for a smaller agency enticed him. In 2021, he accepted a position in the private sector, which offered him a higher salary, is one of the reasons why he left. Knowing what we were up against with police reform and having to deal with different type of training scenarios, we actively recruited Officer Theodoulou. We knew there was a possibility that he would become a reserve with us, and when we did, he jumped in both feet, and he was readily accepted. I can say that. He was appointed in May as a reserve officer here. He finished his FTO training relatively quickly. Since then, he's worked numerous shifts, prisoner watches, details. We had an immediate opening when the desk officer resigned. Officer Theodoulou made a seamless transition, and he was a great transition for us. He helped us quite a bit with intakes for license to carries. With that being said, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something from his background during his background investigation that was told to us, that he was described as a team player, hard worker, go-to guy, and a great kid. As I've gotten to know Paul through these last few months and seeing his work ethics and seeing what he's like, he is a tremendous asset to our department, and we're very fortunate to have landed him for such a solid person and a great employee. With that being said, he is currently certified through post until 2025 when he has to do his recert, and I would recommend that Officer Theodoulou be appointed as a full-time officer.
Good evening. Didn't take long for me to come back full time. Like I said, back in May, I jumped at the bits to come here part time. I heard great things about it. I got here and I fell in love with it immediately. Big part was the family, and my wife was on board with it because she sees how much happier I am overall. It's a great department. I have nothing but good things to say about Chief Gamble, the rest of the guys here. The town, I feel at home. They accepted me instantly. And that makes it easy to be a team player when the rest of the department's like that as well. And I'm very grateful to be here, and I appreciate it.
All right. I want to provide the board the opportunity to ask you any questions or provide any comments.
I don't have any questions.
The only comment I'll have is just another example of your excellent hiring practices, Chief, and I'm glad to see you're coming on full time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No questions, just a thank you for your dedicated service to the public safety and the community.
Thank you very much.
I would echo the same. I thank the chief for his glowing recommendation for you, both when you came on as a reserve and now got even more glowing this time. So that's excellent, and I look forward to you serving on the board. I'm glad you do love the town.
I do. Thank you very much. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
I concur with all the comments previously said. I know when you were here before us in May, I had a lot more to say, so I'll save it for our next appointment here, and I'll reiterate kind of the standard language I usually say. But no, on a personal side, it's obviously really important to the town. I mean, I know I've said a variation of this before, but I'll say it again, that, policing and the value of police to our town. We have a lot of rules, a lot of laws. We don't have a lot of police officers on the road at any given time. You guys are critical to maintain the residents' sense of safety here and also to actually provide, that safety. So it's great to hear that you've come on board, that you've enjoyed the department, you're working with a great team, and we look forward to having you with us full time.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Is there
I was going to preempt you, but no, I'll let you introduce it. I was just going to make a motion that we approve the ratification of the town manager's appointment of Paul Theodoulou to full-time officer effective October 12th, 2022.
Second.
any additional discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, as of tomorrow.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
With that being said, thank you. Paul is going to be a great addition for us. We also have an appointment for a reserve officer. As I've stated before, in this era of police reform and what we have to go through to recruit officers, it's becoming difficult to fill the vacant positions of reserve officers, and they're very important to us. They supplement our full-time force, and with the size of our police department, we need them. We actively recruited, and we went to the University of our Fitchburg State University Police Program, and we knew of this gentleman that was in the program. He was one of my step interns, and I actually tried to recruit him to go play football for me, but he stayed here in the hometown. So I'm pleased to recommend George E. Tibbetts Trey to the appointment as a reserve officer. A little background on Trey. He's a lifelong resident of Lunenburg, graduating from Lunenburg High School in 2018. Yes, he's very young, and he makes me feel very old. Trey was an accomplished athlete during his years at LHS. He was a multiple-year captain and earned an athletic scholarship to Assumption College. Trey left Assumption College after his freshman year to take advantage of the Fitchburg State Police Program. He successfully completed the program, earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice in May of 2022, magna cum laude. Upon graduation, Trey enrolled in a 5th Recruit Officer course at Fitchburg State University, graduating in September of 2022. During this time in the academy, Trey was selected as a 4th squad leader. Trey is currently enrolled in a Master's of Science program at FSU and is as a part of the police program with an anticipated graduation date of 2023. Trey successfully completed his background investigation, pre-employment physical, pre-employment psychological tests, and has met all the standards according to post. Trey comes to us with a fairly impressive resume for a young man at this point in his life. Trey has consistently demonstrated leadership skills, which is evident by being selected as a captain for his football team, member of the National Honor Society, and selected as a squad leader, just to list a few examples. As well as being a leader, Trey has a sense of community as he volunteered for several programs, including working for Worcester, Lunenburg Youth Football, and the Lunenburg Gift Mart. Trey was on our radar since he was a step intern with our department from LHS. We recognized his potential and maintained contact with him throughout his college career. To say the least, I'm impressed with Trey's resume, but I'm equally impressed with his work ethic as he continued to hold seasonal jobs throughout high school and college while maintaining a high GPA. Upon completion of his background investigation, I was not surprised to hear all the positive statements. Trey was found to be a very level-headed person, hard worker, strong work ethic. With that being said, he understood the challenges of college and gave up playing football to maintain his grades, which clearly showed by graduating magna cum laude. This also demonstrates his ability to prioritize his workload and balance his commitments. We feel very fortunate to have Trey join our department during these difficult times of recruiting and retaining. We believe Trey will be a valuable asset to our department and to the community. We look forward to seeing his future accomplishments. With that being said, I also hope to entice him to stay here as we did with Paul and maybe move him into a full-time position with us. And get a long-lasting career with the town of Lunenburg. With that being said, Trey?
Good evening, all. I don't know how to top that, honestly. He's already said all of my accomplishments, everything that I've done up to this point, and the main thing that I have to say is that I feel as though I owe it back to this town for everything that it's done for me to get me to this point and all the support that I've had throughout all of my years being here. And a lot of that support is even here tonight with friends, family, and a lot of familiar faces from the police department, and Sergeant Tossi was with me for 17 weeks of police academy. So these guys know me very well. They hold me in very high regards. I hold myself in high regards, and I feel as though I owe it to this community to protect, serve, and give back what it's given to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. And again, provide the board the opportunity to provide comments or ask you any kind of questions.
I'm very familiar with Trey, and I'm just so thrilled that he's coming on. When I saw his name in the paper, I just was hoping we would scoop him up. So welcome, and thank you for so much for giving back. You are everything that is good about Lunenburg.
Thank you.
Welcome to the force, and thank you for choosing Lunenburg.
No questions, but I thank you as well for choosing to serve the public in this capacity.
Thank you.
It always means a lot when I hear of somebody who grew up here, who wants to serve here. That says, that does more for recruitment and bolstering the town than anything. And to hear you say the words you said about why you want to serve even strengthens that. So thank you for that, and I look forward to you serving on the police department.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I concur, again, with all the comments previously said. I think Lunenburg does a great job with the citizens that come through the school system and graduate. I think the quality of graduate that we have here is excellent, and I think you're a good example of that. I do have a question for you, which is why policing?
So a lot of people get into policing saying that they want to help others, which I stray no differently than that. I want to be able to help, but you can also see it as a pedestal where you're a role model. You're an educator, you're someone who people look up to, and I've always felt as though I'm a good representation of that, and that is something that I've always striven to do through my leadership positions and everything along those lines. It's a big opportunity for me to exemplify being a good human being, looking out for one another, helping in any way you can, and expressing that to every extent possible by taking each call as serious as you can.
That's good to hear. You know, one thing that, I'm a retired military police officer. One thing I advise, and I would say this to my young soldiers, but I'm not a soldier anymore. But I say this to young soldiers who go into policing is that, as a young man, which you're a very young man, that there's no doubt that I have that you're going to be very successful in the role that you have. The challenges that come are all the life things that haven't happened yet. So, the relationships, the getting married, the having kids, and the strain that puts on your profession. And so it's really important as you grow into your role to develop good mentors. Sergeant Tossi is a good example of someone who's a great mentor, but there are others in the department as well. But, I would encourage you to find a mentor, and really, it's for the policing, but it's also as your life starts to change, you're going to need more support. And it's going to take a different form. And that way you can go through those challenges really successfully, because you're going into a career where those kinds of things have a negative impact if you don't handle them appropriately. So that's just one thing I just advise of as you go through what comes next for most people in the next 10 years, what happens in most people's 20s. So, so I certainly, again, I have no doubt that you'll be very successful in this role, and I'm really excited to have you on board. And with that, we'll take a motion here to ratify your appointment. And I know this is a really big day in your life. It's a big day in your family's life. You'll probably forget the words that were said today, but I hope sincerely that you remember, the mentorship part, because that's what makes, I think, officers very successful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion that we ratify the town manager's appointment of George Trey Tibbetts to the reserve officer position effective October 12th, 2022.
Just to clarify, you said I would entertain a motion, but I
I'm sorry.
presume that was the motion.
I'm so used to it, sorry. Old habits die hard, I apologize.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All right, as many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. So congratulations on your appointment.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
aboard. So we'll do a nice round here.
As you can see by how he spoke and addressed, I'm very impressed, and I hope for a long career for him. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
Before you depart, Chief, just,
Yes, sir.
I would just advise, make sure that Nick completes exit interview with HR before he leaves.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna go backwards a little bit here. I know we had them wait. I will take this, Tom. We have a 7:10 appointment with the Lunenburg Boys and Girls Clubs to hold a haunted house event on Memorial Drive. And this is on October the 29th from 6:30 till 9:30. And we'll just give a second to let everyone who's leaving depart
Depart the oh-so-quiet room.
Part the creaky floors.
Yeah, you should have your haunted house here.
That would be perfect. Can we change this?
Add that to the suggestion list.
All right, good to see you guys.
See you again.
Thanks for having us. Honestly, I'm the messenger on this. Michelle, our executive director, couldn't be here tonight. So I have my list. I believe we're just needing approval to hold the event on October 29th. I know emails have gone out to the different departments in town, and needed to let you know that we have approval from the Lunenburg Police Department. They'll be providing our traffic detail, closing the road in front of the Boys and Girls Club on Memorial Drive, and unlocking the gate behind the library for the hayride. The Lunenburg Fire Department will be providing us with 2 light towers, running off generators. They'll be doing a walkthrough inspection the beginning of the week of the event. The town manager has approved, as long as there's no public safety concerns or conflicts with any other events, which doesn't seem there are. The senior center has approved the use of the driveway for the hayride. The library's approved the use of the parking lot for our parking, and DPW didn't have any concerns for the event.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just for completeness, I'll read in since the executive director is not here, but just so people at home know what's being asked. So this is for Shrieks and Creeks, this is in its now, I don't know, 4th, 5th year or something.
Yes.
It's asking for October 29th to hold this. The rain date of Sunday, October 30th. It's scheduled from 6:30 to 9:30. And the particulars being asked for are the following bulleted items, which is permission to host the event, permission to close Memorial Drive from Main Street to Kids Kingdom for the duration of the event, perhaps as early as 5 p.m. for food trucks and actors to arrive, road closure equipment from the DPW, patrol officers to help with traffic and parking, permission to schedule a walk-through inspection with the Lunenburg Fire Department, permission to borrow 2 light towers from the Lunenburg Fire Department, permission to use the Senior Center Circle for the hayride, permission to use the library parking lot, and permission of the gates unlocked behind the library for the hayride to proceed through. Most of these were mentioned by Marcy. So.
I apologize, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Marcy Foreman from the Board of Directors for the Boys and Girls Club, and this is our board chair, Gary Janelle.
All right, and so to the members of the board, are there any questions or comments about the event?
No, I have none.
I have one question. Sorry.
No.
No, I've done.
I just want to know, has anything changed on this list than what you've done in the past, or is this identical to what you've done in
It's
the past?
identical.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I wanted it said out loud.
Yeah,
All right.
we're in preparations now, painting the haunted house with the appropriate paint, fire retardant mix, to be inspected by a fire chief, I believe, before we have the event, so.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
No. All right, so is there a motion to approve, the request?
I move that we approve the request from Lunenburg Boys and Girls Club to hold the haunted house event on Memorial Drive on October 29th, 2022, as discussed.
Second.
All right, additional discussion. I generally abstain from everything related to Halloween, so I will be abstaining tonight. All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. And 1 abstention, the ayes have it. So, congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You are all welcome.
Absolutely.
Tom, you're welcome to fill a room up and bring your shrieks and your creaks into play.
I'll bring some floorboards from here.
And we'll note it for next year's venue.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are almost on time for our 7:30, which is great. So 7:30 tonight for our appointments. We're continuation of last week's meeting, in which we are reviewing articles that have been submitted for the special town meeting warrant. So tonight, we're meeting with a couple different representatives, including sponsors from the Personnel Committee, School Committee, the Citizens Petition for 199 Mass Ave, as well as APDC. So we're going to take that in the order in which it's on the agenda. Actually, I see the superintendent and school committee in attendance tonight, so we will put you first. So I'll ask if you wouldn't mind coming forward for the school committee representative, Carol, and or yes.
The personnel committee chair is here. That might be a quick.
Personnel chair is here, the chapter-leans are here.
Personnel committee one.
Yeah, he's right there. I see all of them.
I apologize.
Except for APDC.
We're gonna take the personnel, then we're gonna call you
You
afterwards.
see
Thank you.
APDC them?
They're in order.
Let's see.
All right. So to the personnel committee.
Yeah, that's why I don't
Thank you,
understand why it's
Carol.
on here.
Hello.
Greetings.
My name's Eric Arnold. I'm the chair of the Personnel Committee, and I believe we have 2 articles. One. Good. I'm glad it's only one, because I could only find one, so. But I had seen in some previous emails, someone mentioned 2, and, all right, but it's one. It's just kind of lengthy. Would you like me to read it, or?
Please.
It's not that long.
If you can introduce what it's about and why you're proposing it.
Yeah, so basically the salary administration plan is what the personnel committee manages, and it lists all of the positions for the town that are not part of other collective bargaining units, and some new positions. If the town wanted to add some new positions, it would need to be approved at town meeting. And so there have been some that we're putting forward to ask the town to approve. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
Which
Yep.
number?
They're all funded positions in the budget. This is just, it's a ministerial thing that's part of the bylaw that they have to get voted on at a town meeting.
Which letter is this? Why?
J.
Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble here loading anything.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
See, I gave him my-
Okay. So the verbiage is to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 70, Section 70-8A, entitled Salary Administration Plan, Schedule A as follows. The position of Administrative Assistant, IT, to be added and assigned to grade 8. The position of Facilities Director to be added and assigned to grade 16. The position of Civilian Traffic Member to be added and paid at the sergeant overtime rate per Local 353, or take any other action relative thereto. My only question for you is, while going through, and I'm not sure, while going through and looking at salaries, the town clerk is only paid $52,000 a year. I find that to be exceptionally low. Have you guys evaluated that, reevaluated that any time recently?
So there's, I mean, I wouldn't say we've evaluated specifically the town clerk's salary, but we have put out requests to have all of the, what we call the positions, how they're graded, right? So that means the qualifications that are needed, and therefore, the higher the grade, basically the higher the salary would be for that. And then, so basically we're looking to have a consultant review, let's see how we compare to comparable towns to make sure that we're competitive with towns similar in size to ours. And that process, I believe, is underway and hopefully will be done by January, I think was the date.
Yep. Between January and February, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. But with enough time before the public hearing.
So if there are some recommendations that we do need to change things, then that would again be something that we would have to, as the personnel committee would then have to come up with a new salary grid, which would impact all employees on the SAP plan, including the town clerk, and that would need to be approved at another town meeting.
Yeah. All right, that one stood out to me as artificially low, and I just quickly just looked at a couple other communities to see what they're paying their town clerks, and it's about $20,000 more. And then I also looked at some of the administration personnel that we have, clerical, that are in the clerical union, and, you know, I think some of the salaries for some staff who've been in town for 20 years is like $48,000, which, you
Yeah.
know, is,
It's a union, would
It's
be
a-
union, not under the SAP.
so,
So
there's,
one of the things that the SAP, we've been meeting more, I'd say lately in the past year or two, because if someone's hired for a position that, you know, exists in the town, and typically they would come in at what we call a step one. But if the town manager recommends that they be hired at, let's say, a higher step, a step 5, a 6, whatever, usually that's done because the town managers recognize we're not as competitive as we should be with other towns, and if we want to be able to hire this person, this is what we need to come in at with an offer. So anytime there is a recommendation to hire someone at a higher step, then the personnel committee has to approve that. And so I guess we've been having a lot more of those votes because of the very reason that you're bringing up, that, you know, maybe our grid is not as competitive as it should be. So hopefully if we do, you know, improve that, there would be actually less votes for us to take, because they could come in at a step 1, an appropriate step.
the rest of my comment there was just that I would hope that because the administration salaries, which, as the town manager pointed out, are a part of a union, that I hope that that's not the comparison for the town clerk. Because I just hope that's not the comparison for the town clerk. But I think we need to resolve those already. So that's just my feedback. That's it. Is there any other discussions on this article as presented?
I have one question just for clarity. This is just for people watching, this is not a money article.
Correct.
So this is just a housekeeping article for people whose positions, I think almost all have been filled already,
Correct.
but need a place in the salary admin plan.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
That was the
Is
same
there
question.
a motion to accept the article onto the warrant?
I would make a motion that we recommend approval of the, I'll say currently Article J, although this is not the final number, of the personnel submitted by the Personnel Committee.
Second.
And I want to thank the chair for coming in and explaining the article.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? As many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously. All right, and to the superintendent and chair of the school committee. I think we try to make sure when you guys are in attendance to front load you, so,
Good evening.
good evening.
So we are before you this evening because we submitted a warrant article in anticipation that we might need some additional funding to that which was secured as part of the capital plan at the town meeting in May. We've been working with an engineering firm, and we received the cost estimates today for 2 options. One option is to provide full HVAC for the building, the primary school. Essentially, every part of the building would have air conditioning, and we would be able to control the humidity in the environment as well. The second option was just a partial, and that was to provide that cooling and dehumidification for just the classroom spaces. The full project, the entire building, came in at over $7 million, which was absolute shock to us. The partial, just to cool and dehumidify the classroom spaces, came in at a little over 1.7 million. The funding secured at town meeting was $232,800. So clearly, we cannot proceed with either of these options at this time, I don't think. However, once we got that cost analysis, my team and I had a conversation this afternoon after we met with the engineers to see if you would consider an alternate plan to accomplish cooling and dehumidifying at least the classroom spaces that does not cost $1.7 million, but stays within the scope of the monies that have already been allocated for the AC project at the primary school. The proposal would be to install mini split systems. My facility director is on the call this evening, as is our business manager. We took a look at this, and based on Mr. Pusateri's experience, he's our new facility director, he believes that we can, with the split systems, provide that cooling and dehumidification in the classroom spaces with the monies that have been allocated. If you were willing to entertain that alternate plan, we would ask if you would possibly consider allowing us to amend the language of the warrant article that we submitted for special town meeting. And how we would be looking to amend would be to see if the town will vote to reappropriate the sum of money from the approval for the primary school air conditioning under Article 6 of the May 7th, 2022 annual town meeting to support the purchase and installation of ductless mini split systems. If that's really not an option that we're willing to entertain, then I think our basic request this evening is just to withdraw the warrant article that we submitted.
Okay. I will open to the board for questions or comments.
So do we have a cost what the mini split
I don't have a
option is?
definitive cost on the mini split because literally that was just a handful of hours ago that we considered this option. We believe that we can provide that air conditioning in the classroom spaces with the money that's been allocated based on Mr. Pusateri's recent experience. He had installed these systems in his previous district. If it's an option that we're willing to entertain, we can look to get a hard price on that.
For me, I mean, I couldn't entertain anything until I knew the price on that, so I couldn't answer their question. You know, I don't have any objection. I'm not an HVAC person, I just need to know the money amount. I would also, without being an HVAC person, that being said, I will say that I have a funny hunch that institutional HVAC is way different than what mini splits are designed for, and the appropriateness, and I bring this up only because this was a discussion with the APDC this past week, because the mini splits in the library have maybe exacerbated other problems. It was indicated to us. So, but without a price, I wouldn't have any idea. I do have a question. When this was brought before the Capital Planning Committee last year, where was the number that was estimated? Where did that come from?
That came from a different engineering firm, and if we just take a step back in time, there was debate amongst the previous facility director and the engineers as to what was required. They were talking about the need for an additional electrical upgrade, which was going to add cost. Our previous director felt strongly that that was not necessary because it had been part of the building design, and it was ready for the units to be installed on the roof. even at that, the cost estimate that included the electrical work was somewhere just north of 300,000, I think. Still nowhere in the realm of what we're looking at here. The engineers have told us that they too were shocked by the cost estimate, but they said that the market, and this is the word that they used in our conference call to explain why the significant cost differential, they said that the market is insane.
They are correct.
So I don't think any of us, I mean, we may have anticipated, with inflation, that it might have come in north of the amount that we had approved for this project, which is why we came with the warrant article in the event that it did come in with a price tag that we, as the school department, could not offset the differential to secure the money to proceed with the project. But clearly, both of these options are off the table.
Came in a skosh north.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Selectwoman Schroeder, do you have any questions?
No, because Tom asked it.
My only comment is it seems that adding or adjusting the article to address mini splits, in my mind, seems a little bit premature, and it seems like a little more legwork needs to be done before that's brought before the town. Have you guys entertained, possibly pushing this until annual town meeting, and then, maybe the market will readjust, and we might see some of those inflated numbers come down and give the town something to consider as well? Because, I think we've seen prices spike up, and they are starting to abate in some sectors, so it may benefit to push the pause button for 6 months and see what happens to the market, and also do a more detailed study on if the mini split option really is viable.
Yeah, if we withdraw the warrant article, clearly we're back to moving the project further out in the capital plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I remember a previous discussion on the whole HVAC system and some points that Mr. Jeffries brought up in the past on it, that the HVAC system isn't merely for comfort, although that is extremely important, that people work in a comfortable environment. It's also for building preservation. And would the option C, this could be entirely academic question, since options A and B right now are totally out of reach, but would option C address that aspect as well?
Likely not. Mr. Jeffries has more expertise in this area than I do, but I would assume, that the need for the cooling to be throughout the building to reduce stresses on the building, classroom units are not going to be adequate to accomplish that, but I may be wrong.
I think that's correct.
I learned something along the way on HVAC.
Okay. That was just a data collection question.
I would concur I would concur with Mr. Dwyer in that I think making any decision without any numbers would be premature, and I think getting the full, because we wouldn't want to change this and then have to change it again. That
Correct.
would seem pointless, so I would probably recommend that the school committee withdraw it, or the school department withdraw it.
Facilities guy was saying something.
Yes,
Your
right,
facilities
facilities.
director.
Hi, Steve Pusateri. Just wanted to, I guess, kind of wrap my hands around the HVAC system versus mini splits and the preservation of the building.
Yeah, so I can speak to that for you. So one of the things was in the springtime, I did a property walkthrough of the primary school, And what I was able to identify in the library area specifically is that the building was designed to be kind of a lead building where you're really designed to be energy efficient. And part of what I observed was what happens when you don't install cooling into a building designed for it, where you have a lot of sunlight, natural sunlight coming into many areas, the intent being to help warm up the building and help retain that heat, that what you're seeing in those areas is that they're too hot. And so what you're seeing in the library is you see stresses all around the windows in particular in the library area. You're also seeing building stresses on the second floor in the classroom areas that are also resulting from these exorbitantly high temperatures that the building's having. So my feedback in the springtime was that, when a building is designed to be energy efficient and is designed to have cooling in it, and then you take the cooling out, that has a negative impact on the building overall. And we're starting to see that in a building that's only 20 years old. So that's my comment that was in the springtime. And the only thing I'd offer is the numbers that you're hearing are not out of whack. I'm currently in the process of selling a building out in Springfield. It's 55,000 square feet. It's 98% occupied, which currently in this market, commercial property is about 20% vacant right now. So it's a super attractive building, but it needs a new air conditioning system. And for 55,000 square feet, it's $2.4 million. And so we have to deduct it off our sale price. And then I also have another building that's roughly a little less than 30,000 square feet, and I have a $1.3 million chiller replacement proposal. So these don't seem out of whack to me, but I thought the scope was a little different in the springtime, that the scope was, kind of one handler unit. The system was already designed to be able to accept it, and so you're really just adding one more building mechanical, but it sounds as if there's a much bigger scope here. That they're saying. And you mentioned that you got the quotes back today. Did you guys submit through regular, was this like a informational, kind of give me an idea? Okay,
Yep.
So it wasn't a regular procurement process to get, okay. So those numbers may come down when you actually do a real full procurement on this, but.
What's the square footage of that building? Do you know? What the square footage of the primary school is?
Mr. Pusateri, do you know the square footage of the school?
Not off the top of my head, but based on 120.
It's okay if you don't have it
Well, they
right
gave
away.
us a cost
Okay,
per square
about
foot.
61,000 square feet.
61.
Yeah, so I'm doing the math on the 7.6 million.
Well, that's exactly that's what I was bringing up. The chair is saying that he has a building 55,000, and that's an exorbitant price of 2 million. We have something that's 6,000 square foot more, and we have something that's triple the price. I mean, that does seem a little bit out of market there.
Well, we don't understand the scope of the 51,000 square foot building. But this project came out was about $124 and change a square foot.
Yeah, you guys also have a lot of not just your square footage, you also have really tall ceilings, which is a lot more cubic space, and that has to be accounted for. So it makes, I think what you got is high, but I think it's in the realm.
Yeah, I mean, and on your project, if they're just replacing 2 to 3 or 4 rooftop units, ERUs, one for one, in primary, there's major electrical upgrades internally, plus ductwork and so forth. So that's why that number's a lot higher than just, replacing, unit for unit on the roof.
Yeah. So it sounds like when they took it out, that they also made additional changes, not just removing that component, but it was also kind of scaling down some of the electricals.
Well, part of what we did with the original, a little more than a year ago, those ERUs on the roof currently, the intention was that those were going to stay. But this team that came out and assessed, they're approaching 20 years, and the life of the unit is such that they would not recommend just adding the cooling component. They recommend replacing the entire unit.
Good thing you have a great facilities department guy now, and the town has one too to lean on.
That's right.
So it seems as if you're prepared to withdraw this article. Is that fair? All right, so are you withdrawing the article?
Are we withdrawing the article?
We are withdrawing the article.
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, not to
Yes.
not to be too cynical, but in your experience, to what extent do contractors run specials when it's a public building?
They don't. They don't run it. What they run is they specially charge you is what they do.
At least 30% more.
There are very few things that get me to laugh out loud. I'm sorry. Sorry, that was like the funniest thing I've heard all day.
Yeah, I know.
I needed that. Thank you.
Prevailing wage is ridiculous. I mean, I have to hire a buy-in, and well, I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. I'm sure there's a lot of people who benefit from it, but when they calculate prevailing wage, I mean, a laborer ends up being like $35 an hour. Someone that you normally would pay, $18, $20 an hour. So, I mean, the prevailing wage costs do add another 30 to 40% on top of everything, and then everyone overestimates whenever it's public procurement.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, okay. That's what I kind of suspected.
All right, let's see. Next, we have a citizen's petition for 199 Mass Ave, and that seems to be Mr. Chapdelaine. If you want to come forward, introduce yourself. Seems like we have two Mr. Chapdelaines tonight. If you want to come forward, introduce yourselves, and just reiterate what this citizen's petition is all about.
Yep. My name is Mark Chapdelaine, Lunenburg High School, class of 1977.
Excellent.
Mike Chapdelaine, class of 74.
All right.
These request to have an article came up when we, after we had closed the dealership. We had a party that was interested in the property, whether it be leasing, buying, lease to own type of thing. And when we started doing some research as to what its value was, we realized that our 16.93 acres of land at 199 Mass Ave, we always assumed was always all commercially zoned. It does say it, wherever you look, it does say C for commercial. Apparently that C only meant that it was in a commercial district. There's only about a third of that property that is actually zoned commercial. The back portion of it is zoned residential A, which really doesn't make much sense because it's been used commercially since 1938. The people in the party before us, the Junkelas that was there, was a salvage yard, and it was used commercially, obviously being a salvage yard, and then we continued to use it since 1969 commercially. The land is landlocked. There's no access to it. We own a small frontage on White Street, and it's only 30 point some odd feet.
Not quite big enough
and there's
for
no
a-
access to that through the commercial land. So it just, for whatever reason, when zoning was incorporated in Lunenburg, there's a funny line where they kind of just cut it short, right in back of the building.
I think it goes back to, I remember at a town meeting, I think it was about 35 years ago, certain sections of the town, Mass Ave, Chase Road, Electric Ave, they said all properties would be zoned commercially 500 feet back. And it's, oh, okay, well, again, we assumed that our just under 17 acres was zoned commercially. And come to find out, that's where that little arbitrary line came to be.
It's only like 250 feet.
Yeah, it's not even 500.
Yeah.
All right. Think your request is clear. I have several questions, but I typically go last in this role. So are there any questions from the other members of the board or comments?
No.
So just to clarify, by this being a citizen's petition, it is on the warrant. It does not require our approval for that. So really, it's just we're getting background on recommendations, which we'll be doing next week.
So, once you zone it, are you trying to sell it or lease it?
Yeah, either or.
Either or.
It's a hindrance to you doing something with the property, is
Right,
that correct?
It makes it a little bit left-handed being the way
Right,
it is.
right.
It really doesn't make any sense to have it zoned that way.
Right,
It could not be developed for residential housing.
correct.
It's been
can't get
used
to it.
commercially all that time.
Right. And now it's just sitting there.
Now it's just sitting there, yeah.
Yeah, bothering me. So- Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, one question I have, just looking at I can't really tell from the map.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
If you'd like, we brought a bigger.
We brought a
Yeah,
map
can you-
that
Well,
you can
I guess
see.
my question is it appears there's some streams on the property and possibly some wetlands, and I'm guessing, how does that limit how you can develop
Well,
that
obviously, it
property?
would still, you would have to fall
Sure.
within those laws of contending with the wetlands. But still, this property can be zoned commercially and still have wetlands. But
So I guess my question is, of that 16 acres, how much is kind of not developable? Do you have a ballpark?
not really, not developable because it's residential or not
No,
developable
because
because of wetlands?
it's
It
wetlands
maybe,
are within the buffer zone.
It maybe affects, I don't know, on the western side of that property, maybe 3 to 5 acres.
Okay. I was just curious, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I think this map does delineate where the wetlands are, this larger map that we have, and they are on that western part of the property line, the Tilton Avenue side, if you will.
I would think that would be something that you should be prepared to address
Yeah.
when the article comes up at special town meeting.
Yep.
Is it possible to see that large?
Yeah, sure. That's why we brought it.
It's a little bit easier to read.
So yours is the whole just shy of 17 acres, right?
Correct.
16.93.
So, and that's why I thought that's what I was looking at, so thank you for bringing this. So one of the concerns I have is that, well, it's a kind of a domino effect. First of all, I'd like to know, if you remember, I wasn't even in town 35 years ago, there may have been a reason why they did this. I can see potentially one of the reasons, because if you open this all up to commercial, when there's all people on White Street and all the people on Tilton, which now have Residence A behind them, you know, the fact that you were using it, obviously it didn't bother them to some degree.
Exactly.
And if something did bother them, they would have something to have a recourse against. But, so whoever you sell it or lease it to may not be as nice a neighbor. So if you open it all up commercially, it's gonna open up by right lots of things that these people could have behind their home that they never planned to have behind their home.
Right.
So
Well,
that is
at one time, they had a salvage yard behind their home for many years.
Well, that was probably way before there was like serious zoning laws either. I mean, you could probably
I'm
put
sure it
anything
was, right.
anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I just think that this, I mean, it needs a real evaluation, not only by conservation, as obviously Mr. Dwyer said, but I'd love to hear what the planning board is. Because then we have to see, where does that 250 line go? Because then if it goes here, then we're gonna start doing piecemeal, you know, spot zoning to say, okay, let's increase this, let's increase this. That maybe that's what we want to do.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
there's
just-
been several other properties in town that they have made changes to the zoning because they were just odd pieces like that, pieces of residential that were wedged in between industrial land.
Anyone that's come up with a citizen petition, just for clarity, and I know you less, but I certainly know Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, for honesty, I've been against all of them, because zoning in this way is not something that I feel should be done. I think that it really needs to be done in a larger capacity. I'm not against looking at the planning board saying, you know what, we should go back and entertain which ones this makes sense
Yeah,
to. and which ones
what
don't.
doesn't make any sense, if you look at the Mass Ave in our neighborhood, if you will, properties across the street, they're almost 1,600 feet deep of zone commercial.
Right.
And I don't know if it's always been that way, or if there was, at some point, some change made to it.
Right, and I don't know either.
yeah,
And the thing
same
is
with
that-
Walmart.
that, you know, lots and lots change, and what's around it changes over time. So you look at it now, and you know, you don't know what was done then. Maybe there was nothing around it, so it's like, okay, you know, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's going to be done commercial.
Yeah.
So, you know, on its face, I'm not against it, but I'm not for it either, because I think it
Right.
has, it may have
Yeah.
a domino effect. And I'd love to hear from, the thing is that doing it as a citizen petition requires no public hearing, and I'd love to know what these, you know, 12, what seems to be 11, 12
Yeah.
homes feel about
There's
it.
almost a natural buffer all the way around the property, both on the west side, the Tilton Ave side. White Street, as you know, goes straight along the eastern side, but then wraps around, the curve in the road wraps around the property. Those lots after the turn in the road, those lots are 600 and 700 feet deep. They're only 100 feet wide. But the properties, the houses themselves on White Street are on the far side of that 600 or 700 feet.
No, I'm looking at it, I'm seeing
Yeah.
it, so, I mean, yeah, it would go a long way to find out what all these abutters feel about that being zoned completely all commercial. Because like I said,
Yeah.
it opens up things
They probably already
by
assume
right-
that it is.
By right,
We did.
if you thought. if
We
they
assumed
thought
all
if
these
they
years
thought
that it was,
did,
yeah.
Then, of course, they would have no recourse. But now, if it got told to them, and they're thinking that going by a citizen's petition in front of, you don't have to notify any of them.
Yeah, we're only did it this way because that's what we were told.
Yeah, no,
It has to be
again,
done,
I'm not,
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, from my perspective, that's what I feel.
Sure.
I'd love to hear from them and have them come in and say what they feel about that, because I didn't even see the top property. So there's actually more. There's White Street,
Yeah, there's
Hill
quite a
Street,
few.
and I don't know what the
But-
back one
so-
is. What is the back road?
It's still White Street.
It's still White Street.
it's just
Like I said,
White
the
Street
road,
makes that,
the road turns
makes
and-
that
and,
curve to the left.
wraps around the backside, yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear from all those people to see what they felt about it.
Pearl and Lynn Hitzvich. Mr. Selectman Franco.
Multiple comments and questions. First of all, not for or against it. You sound like me on some issues.
No, if I was you, I'd be for it, and then I'd be against it.
But you're doing both simultaneously, which is very impressive. So, at least I do it sequentially. Real estate is not my area of law by any means, but I mean, I know just enough to be dangerous. But are there any equitable doctrines that a land court might be willing to recognize? This has been going on since 1938, you say? It's been
Yeah,
effectively...
That's when that property was, all of that property, those homes on White Street, the property at 199 Mass Ave, at one time was part of one huge parcel of land that is where the Walmart project is now.
Okay.
And the fellow that owned all that property, a guy by the name, his last name was Levine, I forget what his first name was.
Yeah.
He had a big dairy farm on that
Abe
property.
Levine?
And he started splitting off all these pieces of property on White Street, and then that 17 acres that we own, he sold to a pair of brothers, and those are the brothers that ran the
Junk lot
repair
service
shop
station, yeah.
and salvage yard.
Well,
So it goes back to 1938.
I was going to initially say that you've probably chosen the path of least resistance going this route, but maybe not. I mean, there could be equitable doctrines that a land court would be willing to enforce. There are all sorts of equitable doctrines when property owners have behaved in a certain way over an extended period of time. For example, adverse possession being one of them. You just sort of, encroach on a property in an open and notorious way for a period of years, and suddenly you can lay claim to it. Well, I'm wondering if there's something analogous where use is involved, where a de facto commercial use has gone on for decades. Nobody's objected to it. It's been open and notorious and continuous. OCEAN is the acronym in adverse possession. This is 30-year-old memories now coming from property. Of course, I hated it in law school, by the way, but I still remember that. So it's open, continuous, exclusive, and notorious, meaning just, sort of boldly. Well, I'm just wondering if there's something analogous in commercial real estate or that a land court might recognize, and you get it that way. I don't know. It might be another avenue. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I don't know that, if nothing could be changed and that remained residential, that property is really, if we came before you then to say we want to put 2 houses up there, I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's, but anyway, we'll, whatever the next steps, whatever homework we need to do, tell us what we need to do, and
Does anybody know, anybody just have a knowledge of such a precedent? I mean, like, you know, I mean, that could be something that could be pretty easily investigated.
What you're saying, Mr. Franco, is that you're suggesting that they need to look into whether or not their use has resulted in kind of a de facto change to our zoning bylaw now.
Essentially, yeah.
I wouldn't know that. This has never come up before from a legal standpoint in Lunenburg, at least that I'm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just wondering if there's a precedent anywhere in the state, you know?
right.
Discourage the board from providing legal advice to.
Yes.
With the process.
Although his rates are reasonable.
Especially on
You
real
want to
estate.
hire a patent attorney
They're really
to do
reasonable.
your real estate law.
Just a question from me, if the process is that you would go before a town meeting, a special town meeting, with a request to rezone that property, and if there was no objection from abutters, or it was voted, everybody agreed, that's stupid, it's been that way since 1938, why are we even torturing them? And everybody votes in favor?
So,
Or at least 2/3 do.
Or at least 2/3?
I didn't realize we were torturing you.
so
Especially you brought it to us and not vice versa, so.
So I have a couple of questions. Have you approached the planning board?
We went and saw him, what, a month and a half ago, and explained what our concerns were. And, you know, he said, well, it sounds like.
Him, the planning board, or the land use director?
Land use director.
Okay.
Adam.
Adam.
Okay,
Yeah.
Adam, okay,
Yeah.
land use director.
And, you know, he kind of concurred and said, well, you know what, that's really strange that that piece of property is split like that, and there's a residential section that's landlocked. And he said you should probably go before the town meeting and see if you can get it changed.
Yeah, he's the one that suggested this was the avenue to take.
Right,
To make that.
special, you know, get on this fall special town meeting. We actually found out before the annual town meeting, but there was no way we
It
could.
was like 5 days before
Yeah,
that we
we
found
couldn't have- yeah.
found this out, and there's no way we could have.
Right.
We did have it all surveyed on the local, Dillis and Roy. They're the ones that came up with that.
So I suppose I'm a little confused by that. So when typically it's common to go to the planning board to request changes in zoning. So you're saying that you met with Mr. Bernie, I'm guessing last month. This is October, so at some point in September.
Yeah, a month and a half ago.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
late in the summer.
And the recommendation was not to go to the planning board
I don't know. No.
and for you to submit a citizen's petition instead.
I don't think he used that term,
No.
citizen's petition. He just
No.
said this is something that has to be, the only way you can change zoning is through a town meeting.
Got it.
That is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true whether it comes from the planning board or a citizen petition.
Right.
The planning board will be hearing this at a hearing on October 24th.
Yep.
And it's happened, I mean, I've been to town meetings where it's almost every town meeting, there's some sort of a zoning issue, whether it's by the planning board or a citizen's petition. I think there was just some this past spring with some property on the south side of town. So we just thought that was the proper avenue, was to have an article at the town meeting. And
So I want to hesitate to say, I don't think it's improper, okay? It's certainly legal. If we take proper and improper out of it, it's certainly a legal avenue to go. It's just not one, and I don't speak for the board, I just speak for myself, it's not one that I generally am in favor of, because again, I'd love to know the notification to all the other abutters that this is going to happen, that it doesn't exist now, and that they will now be, their properties will abut directly a commercial property, which, I mean, I'd love them to have a say. I mean, the whole town has a say in the vote.
I was just going to say, wouldn't they have a say by attending a?
Well, sure, but I mean, they wouldn't,
It'd be advertised.
nobody's going out of their way. I'm sure you haven't knocked on their doors, or have you? Have you talked to any of these neighbors?
a couple of them, but not
So-
every abutter.
Yeah, it's more of a notification, because people don't follow what goes on here. You see the huge audience we have here on Zoom, so, you know. And this is, and we hear it in reverse, that something happened and said, I didn't even know this was happening. I mean, you saw what happened with people and their children getting on bus schedules that they didn't pay attention to an email, and then they're screaming at the school committee because their kids aren't on a bus. So, I mean, it's just a notification issue.
They were notified. So the bus, you can't relate, because they were notified, they got
They-
an email.
No, right. And even when notified, what I'm
Right.
saying is that people
Even when
don't,
notified, they might not even show up.
fair enough.
Right,
Okay, so like.
exactly.
But these
Yeah.
people haven't even been notified at this
They
point.
will
Well,
get
they
a
will
warrant.
be.
But they will.
Yeah, but
They'll be notified when they,
Okay.
yeah.
And like I say, it's
Will they
a
read
common
it?
occurrence to get pieces of property
Not
that are-
citizen petition spot ones, and occurred, yes. And like I said, I mean, some of them have passed, and I've been against every one of them.
So you said that you have not, so typically, as Mr. Alonso was saying, the normal process is to approach the planning board with changes for zoning, and then as Mr. Alonso identified, what happens, and it gets scheduled for a public hearing, all the abutters get notified, they come out, and usually this happens before the warrant is closed. And then that way, the planning board can submit the request, or at least it comes with their support. I understand that, I have similar concerns that Mr. Alonso has. Certainly nothing against the two of you guys personally. You guys have been outstanding businessmen. I purchased some products from you guys in the past when your dealership was open. So definitely nothing personal. I think the concern is that most people live in their homes for 9 years. And I think Lunenburg is definitely probably a little different than most, but even in Massachusetts, the average is only 11. So, a use that goes back to when most people probably weren't even living there. I don't know if that has to me, it doesn't have a lot of relevance. I think that most people buy a home and they see what they have. And yeah, this is a buyer beware state. You need to be aware that things can change. That, just because you abut a business today, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the business that's going to be there in a year from now. And I strongly believe that property owners should have a lot of rights to develop their property as they see fit. I think that the hardship here is that you have numerous abutters all around this whole corner. As you come down White Street heading into Fitchburg, and on both sides of you're surrounded by residential abutters. And so the idea for a lot of those people of having, a mini shopping mall, because you have 17 acres, that's a lot of land. And I know from the development side of the house that usually requests in zoning are tied to a request for potential disposition. That there's something, appealing, or a sale that could be more appealing if you make a change. So most things is kind of like, who gets a Title V, someone that's going to sell the house or refinance it, who changes zoning. Someone that has a need for the zoning changes, who requests to change zoning. So I don't need to get into what that future disposition is. It's really not relevant to the discussion.
Right.
You guys own the property. Your request is pretty clear. You have 500 feet from the road. That's commercial. Everything else is not. And your request is, hey, for all these years we were using it in this function, we need to get the zoning to be changed, so that way when you go to figure out what this disposition is, that whoever that future entity is, that they can kind of maximize their usage of the property. The downside, I think, is that you have all these residential abutters who are going to feel a little hoodwinked if we don't at some point raise some objection to them being notified. And I know that everyone will get this warrant. As I went door to door, I know that most people throw them away. Most people don't read them or even open them for that matter. They think it's garbage. So I don't think that a notice in the town meeting is specific enough to tell someone, hey, pay attention to this specific warrant. It has some impact on you. And even if someone sees
That's
the
kind of the
address.
case in any warrant.
It is. And if someone sees the address, it doesn't trigger anything for a lot of people. I mean, I don't know the address across the street from me. I probably should, but I don't. I can guess.
And that property that is zoned residential, it's not like it's laying there dormant. It's being used to this day commercially.
Right, but again, that's fortuitous.
Yeah, because
right?
you can
That's
have
just,
a building
that's just by
inspector
luck, because nobody
Right.
objected.
The building commissioner could show up tomorrow and say, stop, and that. So my concerns are, I don't see how I can get to the point of supporting the article, at town meeting or recommending approval for it. Because my only concern is the abutters, and I would like to see a process when we change zoning in which all the abutters are notified. If they don't show up to the public hearing, they don't show up to the public hearing, but they all get a specific letter. There's probably enough time between now and special town meeting for you guys to send out letters
We
just to
just
the
went through the
abutters.
process, we changed our, when we sold our new vehicle franchises and became a used vehicle dealer only, we had to apply for a new license.
Yep.
Even though we had a Class 2 license along with the Class 1.
Yep.
If you get rid of the Class 1, now you're going to start from scratch. And every one of our abutters got a letter saying that there was going to be a change in the dealer license at 199 Mass Ave, and we heard from one
And
abutter,
arguably, that has a lot less impact
and they got,
than this will have.
Yeah. And I think that you have natural screening here. And my opinion is that if your request was to leave in a buffer zone around your property of so many feet and then change everything else to be commercial.
Right.
Without objection. But I think that that's going to be the concern is if the whole thing is commercial, there's no requirement other than the special permitting requirements or whoever chooses to develop that requires the buffering. Whereas I
a lot
think
of those abutters that we have.
they naturally
have
are saying have a
encroached.
couple hundred
They
feet.
have encroached over the years. And
Yeah. So those are the people you need to talk to get to be
Right.
decided at town meeting. So, what would be persuasive is if you guys, when you come to town meeting, is if you can come with a couple of your abutters, and who will speak to their lack of concern for this and the natural buffer that exists in their backyards. And I think that's your argument, is the natural buffer of hundreds of feet that already exists behind everyone's homes, and why whatever you guys do here is going to have minimal impact, and how the planning board in the future has the authority to require buffering. I think that's how you get this through.
so just to clarify, we are in fact taking the right direction as to ask for the rezoning. This is the way we were told to do it. We do not have to contact or talk to the planning board, or should we?
You were,
Talk to and,
so we were
is that
advised
Asking
that
what you need to do or what you
what we
need to, you're doing everything legally.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
What you're doing
So
is right.
this is on the warrant, we can't change that, and so you're gonna get a hearing unless you withdraw.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna get a hearing or you get it on the vote from
Yeah.
the town meeting, special
Okay.
town
Yeah.
meeting.
I think what's being suggested is that the usual process is to approach the planning board at some point in the summer, make sure this is on the warrant, make sure they're presenting it to us, not citizens. Not that you can, but it's just,
Yeah.
things tend to pass easier when you have the board that controls this area endorsing it. So it looks like you have a meeting coming up in front of the planning board. Ms. Lemme mentioned the 24th.
October 24th.
And so that would be a good meeting for you guys to be at, and then present this to the planning board, get their letter or get their endorsement on it. That helps town meeting. And then, like I said, the other thing that's going to help, because the main concern is, we've already pointed out, is really reaching out to some of those abutters. In your case, who are going to be favorable to your position and who will, like I said, I've kind of already articulated what your argument is here. And really, if you use some of the other developments in town, and see what the planning board's history is on buffering, which is usually only like 200 to 300 feet.
Right.
And then you also, I know you're working with Dillis and Roy over here, and they know what Lunenburg typically wants. And if you can demonstrate that, even with this change to commercial, that everyone's already going to have this, and wetlands and yada, 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 I don't see how this fails. But I do think that you're going to have, the concern is, well, what about all these residents who now are going to be looking at the backside of a Walmart when they bought a home looking at some woods? And as I say all the time, just because you buy, if you want your view not to change, buy the property.
yeah, right.
So can
I
you
get-
repeat again, the planning board has a meeting when?
October 24th, and I think it's at 6 PM is
Okay.
the time that they advertise for the public hearing.
On articles that they're gonna have on the,
Yes, so any zoning articles need to have a public hearing before the planning board, before the town meeting. They make a recommendation that's also presented at town meeting.
Okay.
So the moderator will call on them asking for their
Glad we
recommendation.
had this little chat.
yeah?
And again, while you're doing your comparative, while you're also kind of making that case about minimizing the impact to abutters, I think the other argument that I would encourage is to give the town an idea of kind of, why this is necessary, aside from, you making more money by selling it as commercial property, to kind of go into those specifics of, the town benefits, obviously, from commercial property, and that you're getting tax income, but also the viability of projects, that there's decreased viability, which I think you guys can articulate pretty well, that the decreased viability of commercial projects on that property, given the parking requirements, yada, 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 that 500 feet's not adequate. So I think your argument is there. It's just how you present it, in my opinion, is really going to be what gets this passed or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Wait, if I may, one further question for my own edification. And I know that there are certain provisions, I don't know if this one is applicable in this context, but where abutters to abutters need to be notified. Is this such a context?
I'm not sure.
All right, so that's another thing to look into.
Yeah, okay.
Which, of
Thank you.
course.
Well, the abutters are going to be in Fitchburg for the most part.
Yeah, right.
Well, in one direction, that's true. But
Yeah, in one direction.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All
as
right,
always.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information.
All right, APDC. Are we having any presentation from APDC tonight?
I thought we posted it to the next week.
Did we?
We gave them, well, you left them
right,
a
that's
slot
right.
for this week, too.
I
It's
did.
just that nobody showed. Yeah.
Information from you, about the, from the town attorney.
Okay. So APDC is, they are on for today and next week, so they're not going to utilize tonight. They're going to come next week to come with their modifications.
So essentially that, the meeting that the APDC held last week, they voted that they would like the condensed version of the article on the warrant. And if town council came back with the opinion that the select board has authority to include the whole article, then they would withdraw their article.
All right, well, the select board does have the authority to include the whole article.
I did receive town council's opinion today, which I passed on to the board, but they have not discussed that yet.
Okay. So that was what we were waiting for.
As I said last week, I would caution against the board if going against the recommendations of another appointed body just for the sake of opening the whole thing up, because then you're almost forcing people to bypass the whole procedure and just put in citizens petitions so that the selectmen can't touch things. Is that really what we want? You know, there's no reason for us to do something that they don't want to do. That's number one. Number two is the opinion of town council was it's really up to the town moderator what is in scope of what can be changed or not. So, you know, not even the select board gets to put what's on the warrant potentially.
Within the scope.
Within the scope of the article, right. The town moderator gets to choose what's in the scope of the article. The select board can choose what's on the article as far as the text, but it's really up to the moderator. And I think we should work cooperatively and collaboratively with our other boards, commissions and everything, instead of in an adversarial way, which this particularly, if we decided to put the whole article up in the intention of opening the whole bylaw, would be adversarial, openly adversarial.
So are we going to discuss APDC tonight? Anyone else want to offer any opinions? No?
On that limited point, I mean, just on that limited point, I'm still in concurrence with Mr. Alonso on this. I think that we narrowly decide the question that's put before us. And as far as gatekeeping, whether that gets on the warrant, as I said last week, I'll reiterate again, I have a strong aversion to quashing something that another body puts before, wishes to put before town meeting by exercising. Yes, we have the authority to do it, but, you know, there's the can we and should we. And I would not be inclined to exercise the authority to do that. So I'm still in the same position I was in last week, as far as gatekeeping goes.
All right. So my opinion hasn't changed either. I think the APD submitted a full, long article, and just like we do with the planning board, that the full, long article should be proposed to town meeting. That's what they presented by the deadline on September the 20th. And I know that we can make small modifications, but I mean, cutting out, you know, 2/3 of what they proposed because they've had a change in mind or fear that town meeting may make some other additional modifications. I think that the logic that holds that everything should come before the town, to me, is the same logic that holds that everything should come before the town.
I think, first of all, the submission of the article was done in its entirety in the red line version and this was discussed, and I'm sure Mr. Scalabrini will point this out, but I will say from being at the meeting at the APDC on Thursday, that it was done for the point of clarity. They asked for advice about how best to present the changes, and they were told that, you know, there are two opportunities, and the one that's clearer is if you show in the whole version what you're going to change. Because when you put in an article snippets of what you want to change, depending on the complexity and how many places you're changing things, the articles, even to someone like myself who is, you know, very experienced in this over the years, becomes unreadable. I don't know what's changing. You have to pull out the whole article or the whole bylaw to look at what's changing. They submitted it for readers' understandability. When it was pointed out to them that, oh, this may have opened up the whole thing, like, well, that we weren't aware of that. That wasn't their intent. So I think we should give them latitude to express what their intent was as opposed to what they actually submitted. Because it was done innocently and for a reason other than let's open up the whole bylaw.
May I add a point?
Yeah, just please state your name, that's all.
As the drafter of
Just be sure to state your name.
I'm Anthony Scullambrini, 5 Valley Road. As the drafter of the change, I had actually anticipated that there would be a consolidation to reflect just the 2 sections that were identified at the top of the document that I presented. It said that we wanted to change 2 sections within the bylaw. And then we went on to redline those particular sections that we identified at the very top of the page. And that language, I thought was pretty clear, and I also thought the language mirrored another warrant that I had been given by Adam Burney, the land use director, for how to present something to you, the members of the select board. It was not to call into question the whole bylaw, because at the very top of the section, I said, we want to change, these 2 sections, 113.8 and I think 113.10. And then we went through to identify the red line changes in those 2 particular sections. So I had anticipated that there would be some consolidation, having seen town meeting booklets 3 times now as a relatively new resident. And quite honestly, this is an easy problem for us to fix if the select board continues to move forward with the entire bylaw associated with the Architectural Preservation District. And the way that we'll do that is to withdraw it and then resubmit a consolidated version and, at the annual town meeting next May. However, one of the reasons why we proposed to make a change was to make the Architectural Preservation District Commission's work more effective for the town, to give individuals a better understanding of what they're going to go through when they come through this process. One of the issues we have with the bylaw as it's written today is that we're almost always, not almost, without scheduling additional meetings, when we get an application, when we get the CTA, we almost always have to call for a public hearing, even though it may not be necessary, but because of the initial time frame that's in the bylaw, we have to have a meeting within 45 days. We have to have a public notice published 14 days in advance. And the end result is that, we end up with getting an application and saying, well, we got to schedule a public hearing, even though we might not actually need one once we have a meeting and we discuss the item that's in place. However, I got to tell you one other thing. The bylaw today, as it stands with regards to timing, is inaccurate. If you read the bylaw, and this is one of the things that we realized once this discussion came forward, and we said, wow, what we're going to do is that we're going to fix the bylaw, both with not only this intermediate time frame, but also the actual end time frame by which we owe an answer to a resident that participates in this process. So I like I said, this is an easy problem for us to fix, and we're going to meet again Thursday night. And we were waiting for word on how you all were going to view our efforts to put forward a consolidated version or the full bylaw. If you choose to say, well, you're going to have a full bylaw, we'll withdraw it. And we'll address this issue in May. But in the meantime, for all the applications that we receive, this bylaw has flaws in it. So that's our position today.
Thank you, Mrs. Scullambrini. Thank you for being a new member of the community and stepping up and really trying to get involved in every way that you can. So, all that stuff is really good. And I have nothing negative to say about any of that. So, All right, is the board interested? We haven't seen the modifications, but I think that we can satisfy the request of the APDC tonight by identifying what our intent is with regard to publishing a full APDC bylaw, or if our intent is to publish the modified changes. So I think two members have already stated their viewpoints on this one, so I'll go to the other end of the table.
Well, I'm sure that it's going to be condensed now or later. So do we want to do it now or later? It will be condensed. You heard Mr. Scolambrini. It will be condensed whether we do it now or do it later. So let's just put it on there condensed. So that the people who have to deal with a flawed bylaw don't have to.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
If I can just ask Mr. Dwight.
Sure. I think putting the condensed version on the warrant makes sense to me. I think if people on this board want to have the debate about eliminating this bylaw and the APDC, we should have an honest debate and not try and hijack through the back door one of the articles put forth by the APDC. And I think that would be more beneficial to the town if we had that debate out in the open as we debated it, putting a warrant article on there. So for this particular article, I'm in favor of entertaining the condensed version that could be brought forth to special town meeting.
So I think that's clear that the majority of the board is going to support a condensed article. So next week, we should expect then to get an update. Excellent. All right.
Mr. Chair, may I also just state something as a general comment, as a matter of precedent and precedential effect. If we, just in general, in a mindset approach, if for the future, when other bodies come before us and are deciding whether or not to expose their full bylaw to potential amendment on the floor, say at the town meeting, or present to us a narrow, condensed, consolidated version, if they think that our disposition is going to be to force them to expose their entire bylaw, then it's going to dissuade them from making bylaws better by just narrowly focusing on the problematic aspects of it, because they think that their entire bylaw is going to be open season. That's all.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, to follow up on that, if I may, I think the town, because of what the town council's response to this question, saying, well, ultimately it's up to the moderator, I think we should have a town policy, and I don't know how you do that by including the moderator, so people know what to expect when they're submitting it. So it's clear, and we don't have this discussion about what we're doing. So when somebody submits something one way, that this is what we're going to do by policy, and if you submit it another way, this is what we're going to do by policy. So we don't have, there's always going to be the gray area that the moderator is going to have latitude on, but it shouldn't be this kind of latitude. And so we should really work with the town moderator and town council to try to adopt town meeting policies that this addresses.
Okay. Any other conversations or discussion on this?
Well, my only suggestion is that maybe they have like an attachment so that people can read the whole rest of the bylaw and see the changes so that it's in hand.
And that would be ancillary
Right.
information at
Supplemental
the town meeting,
information,
which I
yes.
would recommend you do.
Right, a supplement.
Yep.
Yeah,
I would like to address that comment.
yeah.
Because when I was drafting this, and then after the issue came up, I went back and looked at some of the other warrant articles, and it varies. In some cases, by reference, it says the full document that's impacted by approval or disapproval of this document is on file with the planning board. I think that if the town moderator is going to become the arbiter of how the town should vote on an article, that ought to be a policy that is set fairly quickly, Once again, I apologize for the confusion that I created by, trying to present as much information as possible to you all. But I think that, since the issue has come up, I do believe that, if you look at the example that I was given, Heather, it was a plan use document that had a lot of information in it. It was, I think, maybe 3 pages long. Ours was, I think, 7 pages long. But it was part of a much bigger document, associated with plan use. But if you looked at that, if somebody said, everything that's here is up for discussion, then you could have a very long discussion about that particular piece. So I think that having a consolidated version and some understanding as to what the town moderator's position is going to be about what's fair game, and a long warrant change, about long bylaw change, I think the sooner you have that discussion, the better off you'll be. The one that I looked at was the one associated with marijuana sales, the cannabis. And that's in the article by reference. It says, we're going to make a change to this piece, and the whole piece is on file, at the planning board. Which, if someone wanted to bring that with them, they could say, well, this is all open for discussion. And then I think that the whole town meeting process could be in deep jeopardy of a very long meeting. So.
All right, I think we have exhausted discussion on this topic, so let's move to our 8:30 appointment, joint meeting with the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee. All right, so we have, yes, so we have some microphones set up. We see Mr. Roy, Mr. Gray. I'm here. We do not have a quorum, so we do not need to convene an official meeting.
There's Mr. Leighton, is he at his?
Yes.
Oh, we do.
There you go.
Mr. Leighton is here. Thank you, Mr. Leighton, and thank you, Selectwoman Soroka. Mr. Roy, would you mind taking the unique role tonight of chairing this meeting?
Yeah, I know.
And I want to give you the opportunity to call your meeting to order.
Point of order, not to be a pain in
Yes.
the nether regions, but can a quorum be established by a member participating remotely?
Usually no, but currently yes.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, they can,
Yes, they can.
especially if the number present is more, it's a certain
There
amount.
has to be a quorum present of the
Well, COVID
board,
changed that.
but-
COVID
Yeah,
has changed
We're,
that.
yeah,
So
distinguishing the two.
This is a quorum.
It is a quorum.
Normally no. Normally the rules are that a quorum cannot be established with remote members. But we've suspended all that stuff right now.
Okay, I just didn't want to go down the road and then find out we didn't have, I want there to be quorum. I just,
Aren't there 7 members on the board? There's 5 present? Oh,
Three present.
And yourself.
I thought Mr.
But Mr. Jeffries, aren't you on this board?
I am, but I'm one of 3. So the membership of the
But
committee.
Mr. Leighton is not on it?
Yeah, but the question is remote participation. So Mr. Leighton is here, a quorum is present, quorum including the remote participant. And so Mr. Roy is going to call the meeting to order.
Is this is on? Green means
Yes.
on? Okay.
Yes.
I don't have to push the
Green
button?
means go.
Green, okay. This is like technology here. I'm not used to it. Greg Roy, I guess I'm acting chair this evening of the Municipal Building Design Committee. We do have a quorum with Mr. Leighton on his remote, so I will call the meeting to order at 8:38 this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. And as a reminder, I am also a member of the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee, so I will join the discussion and try to do this from both sides. So what we're having this evening, and again, I apologize, I'm having issues with my Google Drive, but what we're having this evening is a presentation from the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee. We will find this in our Google Drive as well, and the presentation is on the charge, which was for the committee to come up with 3 permutations of potential plans. So what we're going to hear tonight is receive that presentation from Mr. Roy and the other members of the Municipal Building Design Committee. Mr. Roy?
So Greg Roy, member of the Municipal Building Design Committee. Candidly, I wasn't really intending on presenting this evening. I think.
You want me to do it?
No, I can do it. Mr. Blatt was on the docket to do this, but he must be retained in some fashion.
I think he's stuck in traffic, probably.
He's probably stuck in traffic. So I'll go through this. So as Mr. Jeffries said, we over the last month or two, we've spent our time putting together three concepts. We're calling them concepts, ideas, if you will, for potential how we would utilize the buildings that we're referring to, primarily and the uses that we're looking to put in them. Primarily the uses being town hall, community uses, school, office uses, and the like. So I'm just going to go through these. I'll try to keep the presentation as brief as possible. Do you all have a copy of this? You're seeing this presentation? Oh, you need to see it on there too. Okay, good. So I'll go through these, and then we're certainly interested in your feedback. Every time we've come before your board over the years, we found this to be a very productive effort, collaboratively between this committee, which of course is a sort of an extension of your board. So we appreciate the opportunity this evening to do this. So concept one. Under concept one, the TC Passios building would be utilized as a future town hall. We would demolish the north wing would be demolished, and we would renovate the kitchen and the gym to be used for future community uses, existing and future community uses, and we would keep the PAC use within that building, perhaps in the same location, but perhaps in a different location, but within that facility. Town Hall, this building that we're in tonight, would be re-outfitted for use as a community building, but we thought that we would preserve this meeting as a meeting room, much like it is today. The Ritter building would function under this concept for school administration uses. Brooks House, under this, would be sold or demolished. Probably more discussion on that point, but that's our thought under this concept. 30 School Street, which again, for all folks listening, is the old primary school, would be utilized for green space under this scenario. And then we have sort of some other, so that's the main plan, those 5 points. We have some other points just to add to this concept. School programs such as the before and after school programs and things of that nature would need to remain in the schools and or be in the Ritter building along with the school department under that scenario. There would be costs, of course, related to the PAC studio. One of the things we've identified in this concept is needing to identify exactly how much of a cost contribution PAC would be giving to this option. There may need to be some duplicate control rooms because we would have, we may have to function, PAC may have to function in 2 different locations, so we may have some cost ramifications there. We also may need to formally subdivide the lot under that consideration. These are just sort of things that the committee has raised as considerations that we need to review. Of course, cost implications. There would be a significant renovation to TCP, of course, required to make that happen. Of course, it'd be smaller than we expect it to be a smaller price tag than the major article than the major estimate that we received almost a year ago. Renovation to the Ritter would be required to retrofit it and or add to it if needed for the school uses. We would have HVAC hazmat abatement as well. I think in the, I'm actually not sure exactly what we were saying on that one, but I think
Yeah,
it was
what I remember in
TCP.
that one, I'll jump in on that.
Yeah.
Is the school requires floor-to-ceiling walls, and so that would be a new HVAC system, and there's also some hazmat abatement that we know now needs to still happen, but may be covered by some of the window project as well.
So that's concept one. Concept two, the TC Passios building would be used for school programs and also for transition space as we make the other building renovations that I'm going to spell out here in the next couple of sentences. Ultimately, that space would be a possible future site for the Turkey Hill, for a replacement to the Turkey Hill Elementary School if it was needed, or could be utilized if it were demolished for additional playing fields and the like. But really, that building would be preserved for school programs under this scenario. Town Hall, this building, would again be used for community rooms, and we thought, in similar fashion to Concept 2, we would preserve this room as a larger meeting room. Ritter Building would then become the new Town Hall, with looking to add an annex or an addition to that building to house all of the town offices in that facility. Under this scenario, we thought about the Brooks House, possibly looking to lease it to a business or lease as a house, possibly. There's concerns with that. It would need a variance, I think, in the zoning district that it's in, or a special permit perhaps, depending on the zoning relief required. The PAC studio, it could be perhaps reutilized for the PAC studio. And we also thought about maybe converting it to the parks office, I think is what we mean by athletic building, and perhaps for use by the Boys and Girls Club. That was another use that we had, a few years back when we were looking at community uses for this project. 30 School Street then would much like the other option, would be green space and parking. This option leaves PAC a little bit more in limbo. There's no real planned space for PAC under that scenario. There would be no long-term community gym, so we'd actually be losing some functionality there. The gym in TC Passios is, of course, used by certain groups, particularly the senior center, after-school programs and the like. We also have the same consideration. We may need duplicate control rooms in certain buildings to manage those recordings and PAC functionality that we have now. This option would not have a food pantry built in to it, which was a part of the original program that we presented to the town a few years back. And TCP, the parcel, basically under this consideration would revert back to school custody. So we'd be looking at that building to continue it, to use it for school uses, and sort of, I guess, giving it back to the schools for use in either a future project to replace the Turkey Hill, which we know is years out on the horizon, but lurking nonetheless, and or perhaps new fields, which is a little less. We're not sure on that, but those are just some ideas that we had. Concept 3 would be TC Passios building would be transition space, and what I mean by transition space is, if I can expound on that a little bit more, is as we're renovating certain buildings, we'd have to vacate them So we renovate the Ritter building, for example, we'll need to move the people that are in there out. So we would use the TC Passios for transition space in that capacity. Ultimately, we'd convert it to a community center, utilizing the gym and the kitchen. Much like Concept 1, we'd demolish the north and central and part of the west wings, and we'd create small office and community rooms. The pantry could be relocated there. We could renovate the kitchen and the gym, and the PAC studio could be maintained in that building. Town hall then again would become community space, again preserving this meeting room for larger gatherings. The Ritter building would again be, under this concept, would be school administration. Brooks House was identified under the scenario as a possible place for storage for both school and town, but also for the school and town facility department, perhaps. 30 School Street then, under this scenario, would become the site for a new town hall, new building on the 30 School Street property for the town hall uses. Again, just like Concept 1, school programs would need to be in the school buildings themselves, or in the Ritter under this scenario, or in a future build that we know is out on the horizon. There are costs related to the PAC studio. Again, we may need duplicate control rooms for this. We may need an A&R to subdivide the lot for this concept. And we may need to provide additional fields and parking areas under this consideration. So we put those together, and we then sort of look to what emerged as commonalities and what we could maybe put together to discuss a hybrid concept. And so we've come up with that concept. So as a hybrid concept, the TC, and the hybrid concept is really intended to be to sort of fuse all three of those concepts together, to identify what emerged as common among all of them, and put together one concept that we thought might fit the most need. TC Passios building would be used as transition space and then become a community center. We would demolish the north, central, and parts of the west wings, create small office and town clerk storage. We could have the community food pantry. The kitchen and gym would ultimately be renovated as part of the community center and be used as part of the community center. And the PAC studio would have a spot for that in that facility. There would be public bathrooms and parking available under that scenario as well. The town hall, this building, when we looked at all three of the concepts, what emerged is using this building as a quote meeting house. So we could renovate the first floor for some smaller meeting rooms, and this second floor again could emerge and be preserved as a larger gathering room. We'd be able to reclaim some of the space that's currently used as the town manager's office. So this building could be reused as the town's meeting house, where we could hold our public meetings and the like. Perhaps also used by the community if space allows. The Ritter building would become, under this scenario, would become the town hall. The Ritter second floor and basement for school administration and the ACE program. And current planning department bridges to a new story town hall annex. So this hybrid really consolidates all the town offices as a slightly larger addition or annex but it would house the, both the town offices and also the school department offices under this option. The Brooks House, under this scenario, would be either demolished or sold. I think the town has tried to sell that in the past with very little interest, but, and then 30 School Street, much like some of the other concepts, would be utilized for green space and parking. Again, school programs such as before and after programs would need to be, under this scenario, would need to be housed within the various school buildings, or again, in a future project. So, I apologize if I was just reading from the slides. I wasn't prepared to give that this evening, but as I mentioned, we are very interested in hearing input from your board, and the four of us, I guess also Mr. Scalabrini, who's been participating as a representative of the APDC, is also here. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, for that presentation. And again, to those at home, we did have our plan tonight was for Mr. Blatt to be able to present. I understand he's probably held up in some traffic, and he also had a PowerPoint presentation to make this a little bigger for those at home. But since I am both chair of Municipal Building Design, thank you, Mr. Roy, for stepping up, and I'll help facilitate the conversation on this side. So we're looking for feedback from the board as to thoughts. I think the hybrid concept, just to reiterate, was kind of, I think, what the committee thought pulled together the best of, and had the least areas that were unaddressed. And the intent with the concepts, just to go backwards a little bit, the intent with the three concepts was to try to figure out three distinctively different ideas, in which we're putting, we're figuring out, where town hall can be, but really changing them in all scenarios and coming with multiple options for the buildings. And then for us to, again, we went back through it and saw, I think, the need for some consolidation that had less kind of dangling out there. So we're looking for some feedback from the board on what your thoughts are and how to proceed.
How old is the Brooks House?
I'm not sure, but it's a historic building.
It is a historic building.
Yeah.
And the north wing, TC Passios, is the one in the rear near the gravel lot, right? Correct? Or which one is the wing that you would demolish?
Correct.
Correct. The one that goes into the back gravel lot?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm assuming that would be parking after you got rid of it?
And which concept?
In the concept one, where you're getting rid of the north wing
Yes.
of TC Passios.
We did not specify what it could be.
Well, I'm just wondering why we're getting rid of it.
Want to take this one or want me to?
If you're going to, is that one where they transition kids, the school, does everything have to move from the school to the school buildings in that one as well?
So
I'm just curious. I'm not sure where we're housing
Yes.
these children.
Yeah, so part of the consideration as we're looking at cost was because the TC Passios is a one-story building, the cost of renovation starts creeping because of the length of the building, in the sense of plumbing pipes are longer, electrical wires are longer, whereas a stacked building, you save a lot of that
To
by
go
not
up
having.
instead. Okay.
Because you're going, between floors instead of trying to go down really long halls. So I think what we identified was that the cost to renovate the TC Passios is rather high, and may not be, it's likely, based on the cost that we received in the spring, I think there was an appetite not to approach those numbers and to find ways to decrease the overall cost to the town. And so right now, in previous plans of what to use the TC Passios for, that north wing was slated for school-like services, and the central wing was slated for PAC, a food pantry, and the like. And so with the removal of school-like services back into schools, it decreases the need to have to renovate that space at approximately, $300 to $350 a square foot. And so that was, I think, what we had in mind this whole time, was how do we minimize the need?
Okay. Do you know how many children participate in those programs?
Approximately, right now, about 110 is approximately their max. We
That's
didn't,
just the that's the before and after program.
Correct.
They also have the Early Learning Center, which is a preschool program.
Yep.
Do you know how many people are in that?
I'm not sure what the numbers were, but in this scenario, the Early Learning Center doesn't go away. It just moves with the school offices. So there's as well as ACE. So part of the concern was specifically with ACE, was that ACE has to be co-located with one of the members of the administrative staff. I believe it's the special education coordinator.
Yep.
And so ACE is generally a 4 to 6 member program. And then how the school provided info on the community kind of health link is that for the most part, it's like a telephone. And that they have to have an office and a phone, but really that's what they need to provide. I want to make sure I got that right?
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
And the Early Learning Center, that would also go to the Ritter? That's the preschool program that they run at Turkey Hill right now.
So
Separate from the school preschool that's at the primary school.
The intent was for ACE and the community health link to move with the district, and everything else would be back in the schools. The school department did understand the implications of this, and I think the feedback that as I recall the conversation that we had with them was along the lines of, there is a need for a future school, and that when that future school gets built, that it may be advantageous at that time to plan for the after-school program to be in that building as a home. And so this would be a short-term kind of arrangement. So that's the idea.
Okay.
There's also, I will say at our meetings, we've had a mixed response from the public in terms of should the town even be providing space for the before and after school program. And I think that while many members, including myself, feel very strongly that the town should be providing space, I think that there is a mixed feeling out there in the community about that.
Okay. That's interesting.
And just on that topic alone, the school department, the school committee representatives that came and the superintendent were pretty adamant about their reasons for not having the after-school program in the schools. And I think part of that was separation of space, that it negatively impacts the learning environment when children are using the same space for less structured activity versus education, and that that was kind of, I think, the crux of the argument for why it was so important to separate. I think our counter response to that was, well, when you look at some of the top ranked districts in the Commonwealth, they do not have an after-school program that's separate from their schools, that it's handled in their cafeterias. And so I think the response back was, well, if a lot of these districts that are in the top 10 of the state are doing this, then we can probably do it too.
Mr. Chair, could I say something?
Yes, of course.
I think it's a valid point. I've just totally lost my train of thought. I have to.
It'll come back to you.
Goodness gracious, it's been a long day. I'll come back.
I vote for shorter working hours for Mr. Roy.
Goodness gracious.
You're hitting a 12-hour here
Just
or
totally
more.
blanked.
Oh. Any other?
Yeah, I got it now.
There we go.
I think that we all want to do, and this is Greg Roy speaking now, but I'm sort of summarizing my experience on this committee over the last 3 years. I think we all want to put together a program. We all want to put together a program that provides the best level of service for all these uses, for town hall uses, for school. We want the kids to have a dedicated space for after-school programs and all the other programs that we're mentioning. The price tag on that's $30 million minimum. We found that out, last year. A new build is $40 million to do that kind of space. So when we went back and sort of re-embarked on this process, like Mr. Jeffries said, we're really trying to find ways where we can put this with a price tag that is doable for the town. We heard that loud and clear from members of the Finance Committee when we presented the numbers on the town meeting floor. So doing that, as Mr. Jeffries said, is going to require some scaling of that initial nice, would be awesome to have scope that we had presented. So it's challenging. There's going to need to be some scaling of that, I think, as we look at it. Of course, this process isn't over. I mean, maybe we can find ways to do it, but that's what we're up against, I think, some of that, so.
My suggestion is to not try to say that you're going to move extended day to the Ritter building. I just don't think that that is doable at all. So I wouldn't even have it in there anywhere. Because that's what you wrote, in the schools or possibly Ritter. And I just don't think that that is even a good potential. If you're gonna move them, just put them back in the school that they go to, like Turkey Hill or at the primary school. But the Ritter, I don't think can house as many kids as we have in the extended day programs. Or have an activity or a place for them to be outside or inside so they can, at the end of the day, utilize the energy that they've stored all day long. So I just think that you should take that off, so that people don't see it, and there will be people looking and wonder and think it's a really bad idea.
All right. If we can keep going down the line. Any other comments on anything else, Ms. Roca?
No.
Mr. Dwyer?
I agree with Ms. Roca's comments regarding the extended day program and not proposing those programs be moved to Ritter. Other than that, it seems you guys have done, the committee has done a good job at trying to minimize new construction for the most part in these options, and I think that will be important for whatever solution we come up with. But beyond that, I don't have any further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you. I did attend this last meeting of the Municipal Building Design Committee, so I've been kind of grinding on this for a little while, and my initial reaction at the time, and it still is, I mean, none of these is perfect, right? It's different levers being moved on each one of them to create different scenarios. The one I'm gravitating towards, and I'll tell you what maybe I'm not even gravitating, but the one what I like about the hybrid concept, the aspects I like are that it envisions arguably the most robust uses of the current town hall building and the Ritter. And once we got that $30 million reno and $40 million rebuild over there, the idea of some kind of an annex on Ritter started becoming really attractive to me. Because I think that's basically, that's sort of a non-starter. I think that was the consensus. So this envisions a robust use of the current town hall, not that the others don't envision a use for this current town hall. It's one of the two plans that talks about doing an annex on Ritter. And it also, unlike Concept 3, if I'm understanding Concept 3 correctly, it's some sort of a new build at the current primary school site, I take it. It keeps the options open at 30 School Street, which, let's not forget, ultimately, I think we're going to put the question before the town. We still have a live proposal going on over in that space that I think we need to keep the option open for, and so the hybrid concept does that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Franco.
I will say that, first of all, I want to thank the committee. So this is a real good example of really meeting the charge. So thank you for giving options and everything. I am one for options, and obviously these are conceptual options. A lot of the devil is in the details about what these buildings look like. I'm afraid, as I always am, that when you give people too many options and they get frozen and they get fractioned, and that may be averse to a decision being rendered. But, so, I don't know that there's any way around that, but we did ask you to do this, and I think this is a great example. I, for one, am for the hybrid one. If I had to rate them, I'd say that's my highest one. I like the fact that everybody is taken into consideration. I like the fact that the 30 School Street remains as a green space, so we actually remove a building from, an additional building from being under the town's maintenance charge, instead, which is why I don't like concept 3, because we're actually adding a building. And so we're getting rid of one, and then we're adding another building, and I'm not sure I would agree with that. I think using the Ritter is a better choice, and then eliminating one building. I would say that the concept 2 is problematic, because I do find that the people have come to rely on PAC and the services they provide, and not having a studio and having had them wait this long already. I'd like to make sure that they have a home to be in and a studio to be in, and that being up in the air. I mean, maybe that's a weakness in that concept that can be addressed other ways, but that is glaring to me. My second favorite choice after the hybrid would be concept 1, which was more in line of what we were looking at already, just scaled down. And I do have a question. In all the places except concept 3, all the other concept 1, 2, and the hybrid concept, the School Street is used as green space and parking, but in concept 1, it just says green space. Was that just left out? Or is it green space parking, or was there a reason it's just green space?
I don't think we intentionally excluded parking from concept 1.
I just wanted to make sure, because, So
I think there was an identify that in the other plans where it's noted that there was a need for more parking.
Okay, fair enough. So I think that those two, hybrid being my favorite one, and then the concept one. I like the idea of Ritter, because I think Ritter is a very serviceable building, and I like the fact of its architectural thing. And to put Town Hall in a place like TCP was never really compelling to me from an aesthetic standpoint. And if we can do it, I'd love to know what the footprint would be. But to keep Ritter in the town, as because it's a beautiful building, if that's possible to do, I think it's great. The last thing I would say is that the Brooks House is going to potentially, anytime we see the word demolish, is going to be a battle, because of its historical significance to the Historical Commission, and also the precarious position it is on the school properties. To carve out something would you want to live there? You'd be like living in a fishbowl. You'd have schools around you, you'd have no trees, you'd have a retention pond to your right, so you'd have to find a special person. It's allowed in the district, because it would not have to be a conforming property, and I think that's allowed in the district.
May have lost its pre-existing status, though. As a residence, because it hasn't been used as one in a long time.
But I think I remember speaking to one of our previous selectmen who was on that, when that district was made, that building, that it was written in such a way that the village district could be done in such a way that would not be a problem. But however, again, you wouldn't be able to put a garage. I don't even know where you'd put a driveway. Would you put the driveway off the entrance to the school? That would be a very strange thing. So I do know that in any scenario, the Brooks House is going to be a hurdle, a challenge to get over. But I do like the hybrid one the best, and I like the concept 1 second, and the other ones I think have things that I really couldn't get behind. I think a town hall at 30 School Street, to me, with that size of the property and everything, just would not fit that area for me.
I'll make my comments after you, Ms. Lemon.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm laughing at you, so you'll leave your comments after.
Again, to reiterate Selectman Alonso's sentiments, a lot of thought and discussion obviously went into this to come up with all these different iterations and identify areas where all the departments and everyone was going to land. So thank you for that. couple of questions I had were space needs and how this compares with the DiGregorio space needs assessment. I haven't seen how those figures align or don't align as far as space needs, if you're trying to fit in what we have for available space versus the needs that were addressed during that discussion.
We haven't, I can answer that. We haven't drilled down into detail on how this would be configured yet. I think the intent tonight was to get feedback from the board, and that the next steps would be to work through those details.
Okay. Is the intent to, like the TCP Building Design Committee, to engage and do a lot of outreach with the end users?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, let me stop on that and correct myself. We already have a lot of data that's already been collected from the process. So, after tonight's meeting, the Municipal Building Design Committee is also going to go before the planning board, also go before the school committee with these concepts to get their feedback as well. And based on the square footage of these buildings, what was proposed at TC Passios fits into these footprints, and that's kind of how we came up with the square footage of what the needs for an annex would be. But this also accounts for the communication that the community sent out to you and to the school that says that we're eliminating a large amount of long-term storage.
But that was, strictly storage related, not
Correct.
office.
Correct.
Okay. Right. I would just encourage that be done, because even in a year, we've changed as far as composition and staffing. And looking long-term, you wouldn't want the plan to be short-sighted on what the needs are. The cost, has that been an exercise as far as what needs to be renovated or constructed in all these options?
We do not have costs. So what as a first step, prior to getting to this point, we went through the Vertex reports and the TAPE studies, and that's what we spent the summer kind of doing, was really combing through, or late spring into the summer doing, was combing through those reports to identify all the things that were already identified as needing to happen and in these buildings, and then crossing it with the work that's already been done and approved at town meeting, as well as this other work that's been approved that hasn't been done. And so what remains, I hope I'm answering your question, what remains to be done at these buildings is really tied into future planning. That, I'm not gonna think of any specific examples right now, but I know that what we came up with was, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do this if you don't know what the use is going to be. And so it makes sense to make these kind of final changes once we have that use identified. Did I answer? I'm not sure if I answered that properly.
I'll ask it a different way. So each of these options has spaces that would either need to be renovated.
Correct.
Or new construction. And the figures we got from the last DiGregorio had new construction or renovation per square footage costs.
Yep.
Could those be applied to those spaces that?
Okay. If you don't mind. Yeah, I think our intention is, once we settle in on a sort of preferred concept or preferred track, we'll start putting together costs. And I think also phasing plans. So not looking to do all this at once, probably, so that we can spread costs out as much as we can, as much as possible. So I think that would probably be our next step. Well, probably our next step is your first question, is to really drill down on space, new updated space needs. Look for efficiencies there if we can get them, but also planning in and accommodating any positions that we've added or positions that will be added. And then I think ultimately our step is to come up with a sort of a roadmap, as one of our previous members has coined, for how we're going to get there. And that needs to include costs and sort of a financial roadmap, if you will, for how we would phase this and what the cost of each of those phases would be. So I think that's our next, one of our next big steps. But we haven't gotten there yet.
And there will be a need for money, help.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, where questions leading. How is this going to compare to what we got for costs if you're renovating, new construction, all these different buildings, demolishing? Where does that compare to where we were at a year ago? But related to the chair's point on the vertex, those were just to bring the building to current use, regular maintenance that needs to be like repairing the roof. It's not, they weren't intended to a total renovation of space, or uncovering hazardous materials that you may not see on the surface too.
Yeah, there's a lot of need that's not addressed in those reports. Like, we know that this building needs engineering support, you know, structural support in this building that wasn't identified in those reports, and we just don't know at this stage what exactly it needs. And so there's going to be a need for some funding here.
Yeah, one thing that emerged from the discussions, we have had, I won't call them battles, but skirmishes relative to the Brooks House already.
Take offense to that.
Scrubs. So, you know, I put that one in a little bit of a different category personally, but your point about a demolition of that, of really any building, but that building will certainly be, maybe not controversial, but we'll certainly have a lot of discussion. But there was no scenario where any of us considered or thought or that it would be a good idea at all to demolish this building or the Ritter building, all right? And just because there's significant structures in the center of town. It was a sentiment with all the committee members, and it's, I think, the sentiment of everybody that we have talked to. I don't know if we have many people that have voiced, if anybody, that's voiced a desire to see these buildings removed. So if we're gonna keep them, to Heather's point, of significant renovation, particularly to this building, is required, no matter what you put in there. If you reuse it for what it exactly is what it's used for now, or if you transition it to a new use, we're gonna need a significant renovation to get more years out of this building and make it a viable building, the one that's not gonna be, you know, that's gonna deteriorate over time. So, those are costs we need to assign to get, you know, ultimately to get costs that are gonna be presentable on a warrant article. We're gonna need some consulting support to do that. But I think, and please, any of the members correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're hopeful to get a sort of rough order of magnitude costs on these things between the resources that we have in town available to us, using the numbers that DeGiorgio put together and other construction estimates that we have and other resources we have in town. I think we're hopeful to put together a rough order of magnitude cost and phasing plan that we can present to the town to start to put together that roadmap. And maybe we take this one step at a time, or we can decide to do a lot of different paths. But I think we're hoping to get that level in-house before we go out and get some consulting support, which of course is going to cost more money, and we've already spent a lot of money. So we want to be careful with what we ask for, and we want to try to put, you know, put the money to its best use, I guess, when we do ask for it. At least that's my thoughts. I don't want to talk out of turn with anybody.
My last comment would relate to your discussions with APDC, as that should be noted as a consideration in pretty much all of these concepts, because any alteration to the buildings will have to go before the APDC. The annex on the Ritter, I would think they'd take the consideration, because we've gone through them to APDC recently about the windows, that even the replacement of the windows was a factor of a negative approval. So that annex would, I don't know, I would think they'd deem that would degrade the historical integrity of that building.
Well,
so. But that's just.
I see Mr. Sconbreeding wants to speak, but I will say one of the things that we've done is we've incorporated APDC representative into all of our meetings. And they participate fully as if they were a voting member, and they provide feedback throughout the whole process. And we know that Mrs. Galambrini, does go back to the APDC, kind of with status updates, but Mr. Galambrini can speak to that. He's kind of the 8th member of the LMVDC.
And clearly, we appreciate the opportunity to participate at the level that we've been. What's surprising about historic preservation is that an addition onto the Ritter building is probably less problematic than what most might see. My experience in doing historic preservation is that you can add to an existing facility as long as you don't try to mimic what the facility is today. You want to pick a complementary style and one that doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, but what you don't want to do is make the old look like new. That is the common approach to historic preservation of a building that's going to get an annex. And there is case after case in the state of Massachusetts. There were case after case in the state of Ohio where I had a lot of experience in historic preservation. So while it might seem to be something that would be a big challenge, I think that it's a very workable challenge, in terms of doing an annex to the Ritter building. I think that's, because we're not going to modify the existing fabric. There may be some because you're going to put something next to it, but that's relatively easy to do in the historic preservation world. I think that the Brooks House is clearly a challenge, and life is full of negotiation. Lou is an attorney, that. Life is full of negotiation. And while, the people who are involved in historic preservation in the town of Lunenburg would like to see everything done just exactly the way, historic preservation is done, there are challenges with buildings like the Brooks House. I think there's ways of doing it, but I think that it would be a challenge. For example, I've seen retention ponds turned into usable space by, bridging them over with various types of structures that then make that space available for use as a parking lot or as a driveway or as a garage for a house. But I think that, from the APDC standpoint, we recognize that that's going to be a challenge. What I've reported back to the APDC members is that I'm pleased to see that there's genuine interest in preserving this building, Town Hall and Ritter, because those are, really the heart of the historic fabric and what creates what I like to call downtown Lunenburg. The Brooks House is certainly going to be a challenge. The one concern that I have, going back to the discussions that we had last fall at the at the special town meeting when we got this massive bill, is that if we're going to use Town Hall for anything, there's going to be an expense associated with renovating it to be useful, not just putting a Band-Aid on like Vertex has been proposing to be done, 5 years ago. The Band-Aid keeps getting bigger because of the lack of action on those Vertex issues. And I think that from a historic preservation perspective, what I think I and my fellow commissioners would like to see is the maximum utilization of the buildings that we're going to spend money on in this town. And my concern is that if we just turn this building into a meeting space, is that a maximum utilization? And I think that what concerns me is we kind of kicked that can down the road with the Brooks House. I mean, the Brooks House has been over there for, a couple hundred years. And then the town ended up being the owner. And then it was, the Lunenburg Ledger's office. I was surprised when I heard that. And then it was the land use planning director's office. I think that the one concern that we would have about Town Hall is that it's not fully utilized. If we're going to spend $1 million to fix up this building, it should be really utilized if we're going to spend $1 million to fix up this building. So that's the perspective that we bring here, is that you can do historic preservation, particularly with regards to an annex. We can fix this building up, particularly with regards to the fact that it's been standing here since 1830. Well, not exactly here, got moved over in 1867. But, the building has still has lots of potential, and it would need, some upgrading, with regard, as soon as we change the use of this facility, now you kick in a whole bunch of different code requirements that might not exist if you're going to say it's still town hall, particularly with regards to parking. So that's our concern, that's the APDC. But I got to tell you, we're not here to be adversaries with this process. This town needs some better facilities. Clearly, this town needs some better facilities. It's a disservice to the staff not to have those better facilities. It's just how we get there. And the historic pieces, we're mindful of them, but we're also mindful of the fact that this town needs new facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Scullenbrini. I'll also provide some feedback as a member of this board to the process that the LMBDC has taken. I want to start with APDC actually. So, it has been really helpful having Mr. Scullenbrini at the meetings and full participation. So I first want to really acknowledge that. I think that we're aware that there's a lot of historical implications here, and so we want to be on the front end of that and make sure that we're accounting for all that, and that whatever concerns are out there, that they're just built into the plans, and collaboration is always the best approach. So in this area, I think, I'm really happy as well, Mr. Scullenbrini, that you specifically are the representative, because I really like your approach and I enjoy working with you. My feedback on the three concepts, the hybrid option kind of jumped out to me, and I know I can't look over here. The hybrid option jumped out to me, and I think that there's a lot of good things there, and I'll just speak to it a little bit. One of the good things about, I think, the meeting house plan is that a meeting house is a historical New England thing, and that before you got to the town halls, you started with meeting homes and meeting houses, and that's where meetings happen. And I think that this building comes with a lot of challenges. Number one being that it is very old, and a lot of the wood here is original, and at this point it's 200 years old. We can hear the floors creaking, and creaking floors is wood moving, and wood moving on nails, which is structural always. And so there are definitely some concerns, I think, with this building that's going to need to be shored up. And I think as you think about, well, how do you take a 200-year-old building and make it last as long as you can? I know that I'm perceived as being a bit adversarial towards APDC, but I want to note that I spent 2 years working at a historical building. My whole goal was to figure out how to preserve it, and that was why one of the members online recently posted something, and I recognized it because it was in the church that I was working at for 2 years to help preserve and make some building renovations there. Community, one of the things I think with older buildings that helps them last long is sometimes minimizing the usage. Is saying, hey, right now, town hall is heavily utilized. How much longer can we keep using it in this function without making significant upgrades here? Not long, in my opinion. And so, I think that there's a model that we can go through that would allow us to make some modifications to this building to say, hey, if we want this to be here for the history of the United States, however long that is, and hopefully it's forever, maybe the best way is to go back to our roots and use this as a meeting home. And that gives us a usage that, consolidates town offices. One of the things really is also PAC, is that it allows, again, that the benefit of 2 floors. Instead of PAC trying to run lines down a huge hallway at TCP, they're running it downstairs. And so that spread, the cost of the wiring, the cost of cabling, it's less. And it also puts all the meeting rooms in one building. And so I think that there's a consolidation of cost as I see it through that plan. And then, again, I think a lot of members drive by Town Hall without full awareness that although the building is pretty on the outside, it's also pretty when you look at the structural stuff on the inside. So that was that building. I think Ritter, the concept there was the same, was, all right, so we have the meeting house now where we have the consolidated area for all kind of town meetings that are already happening, because keep in mind that the plan as presented, right now we already have 2 meeting spaces in Ritter, and this plan eliminates them. And so it's really relocating those 2 small meeting rooms that are already at Ritter, and it puts them back in this building. And so, or puts them in this building. So I think that there's a lot of good, in my opinion, about the future use of Town Hall functioning as its meeting space. The other thing that was already mentioned that I want to highlight is we really looked at minimizing new construction. That we identify that that's the cost driver, And so how do we minimize that opportunity? And so I think we landed at 3,500 to 4,000 square foot annex should be sufficient. And again, there's more analysis to be done, but that's a lot smaller than a 55,000 square foot renovation at $325 or more a square foot. And then also looking at the existing TC Passios building, I think some of the thought here was, the gym, we already are using it, let's keep using it. We're already using the cafeteria, let's keep using it. We're already using the kitchen area, let's keep using it. And so it's minimizing what needs to be changed over there to keeping the core of that building the same. And then it's looking at, again, the west wing, and I think in our first iteration, we were mindful of where the walls were, but I anticipate that in this next iteration, that we'll probably be more insistent that walls don't move. So that way we can keep costs as low as possible. But you really have the opportunity then to drive by the building. The front of it's going to look the same, that you keep packed there, you keep the pantry there, you provide that commercial kitchen for the farmers, for other members of the community, and then by eliminating the whole back portion of that building, anyone who goes to school events, what's lacking is parking right now for some of the athletic events and also public bathrooms. And so it provides an opportunity there to meet that need as well by providing some more parking. We didn't drill down into is it going to be gravel or not, but you have the space to make that happen. So what I see through the hybrid is I see a solution for multiple things. A solution to provide more parking to students and families at the schools, near the school, provide public bathrooms, to maintain the community's purposes of the gym, the other things that matters to so many people. It gives PAC a permanent location for a home. I think it continues to use Town Hall in a way that's already been used and is somewhat aligned with the historical purposes of Town Hall. It keeps Ritter Building in its use. Ritter Building is a great building because it was designed to hold books. And so, when you're holding books, the amount of weight you have to be structurally designed to carry per square foot is significantly more than any other type of construction. And so that's a really solid structure over there. And I think that there's minimal need to really change that solid structure and really just the interior walls, which then comes with an HVAC change. And we know that's going to come with some costs as well. My highlights are that, again, I see this as a good consolidation away. I think we really went back to the drawing board to figure out how do we minimize the cost to the town. And ultimately, there's going to have to be a phased approach to get this done. And I think that TC Passios would function as a transition space. And also, one other thing to note that we were mindful of is a lot of the reason why you hit these level 3 triggers, it's related to cost and scope. So once you hit a certain building percentage of the building value, then you're triggered to hit the building code. The other way you hit it is by the quantity of the building that you're touching. And I think we see an opportunity where the front portion. He did. I think we see an opportunity where the front portion of that building can be renovated while the rest of the building is still standing to potentially avoid the structural triggers that we hit in the springtime, which resulted in, I think it was like $11 million or somewhere between $8 and $11 million of that cost was related to those triggers that we hit, and we had to do code upgrades. And so part of this plan is to only renovate a third of the building, roughly, to help avoid some of those things. And then down the line, you demolish the other portions of the building. So the only thing that we're not talking about that's the elephant in the room is future Turkey Hill. And all these plans kind of box it in. Not all the plans. The hybrid plan, in many ways, boxes it in and provides, it takes that site from being available for a future Turkey Hill. But we also know that, and there's something that we identify that we need to look into, is that there's an understanding that when Turkey Hill was built, that it was built to be able to expand. And so I think there's interest in understanding what those plans were when it was designed, and having a better understanding of what that future expansion, where that was anticipated on being at. So that way we can kind of dig those plans back up to see if it's still a viable option. But we are going into this with the awareness that Turkey Hill gets boxed in. Into staying at their current location or another parcel in town.
One other thing. The other thing I wanted to mention that I was thinking about when Mr. Scalabrini was talking is when we presented the $30 million renovation to TCP, the charge of this
of the committee at the time was only TCP. It didn't include discussion on what was going to happen to this building when it was vacated, or what was going to happen to the Ritter building when it was vacated, if that project would have progressed forward. There would have been costs to renovate these buildings to keep them standing under that. Even if we had got behind spending $30 million on a major renovation at TCP, we still would have had to put money into this building, at least to Band-Aid it, to keep it from, falling in on itself, to keep it serviceable. Because I don't think, as I said before, I don't think even under those scenarios there was any sentiment for demolishing them. So we're still going to need to put money into that. So I think that, when the charge of this committee was expanded, it allowed us to try to look for uses in those buildings that, since we're needing to renovate them anyway, right? Why not renovate them to use, and put some square footage in there that we need, that now allows us to take it out of buildings like a major renovation of TCP. It doesn't need to be as big now. So, I think that was our, that was one of our goals. Yes, the use of this building, ultimate use of this building will drive what kind of renovation and how costly that renovation will be. But there is going to need to be some, regardless of what we do. If we want to keep this building standing, we're going to need to renovate it in some fashion. So, Mr. Scalabrini's point is valid. I think that, I agree with Mr. Jeffries. I think that the idea of a meeting house kind of resonates with me for this facility. It's it seems appropriate. It's what we've been using this for a long time. I'm sure since for decades or centuries. And it just seems like it fits. So yeah, that's what I had.
All right, any other comments from the board, questions from the board or the town manager? Any additional information from any members of the Municipal Building Design Committee on this? And Tony? All right. I think you are, if you want to, I want to give you some time to adjourn your meeting.
Sure.
And thank you again for being here this evening. We know this was a late appointment, so
No
thank
problem.
you all for being here so late. And
Yeah.
I know we were stuck in traffic, Mr. Blatt. So
Sorry about that.
it's all right.
That's okay. So before we adjourn, I thank you for the opportunity to do this. As I said at the beginning, I think these have always been productive. I don't think tonight was any exception. So we appreciate the feedback and the opportunity to come and talk. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for the whole board.
Thank you all.
All right. So I think we are on to the town manager's report.
Do not have a report for tonight.
That is fine. All right. Last week's was really lengthy, so that works. And then we know tonight was planned to be a 3-hour meeting, so we're almost at time. All right. So reviewing special town meeting warrant articles. Are there anything new that we need to review? Or are we able to discuss next week? What is this?
So in your Google Drive, I put together a chart for budget adjustments, and these are estimates for a couple of these budget amendments for fiscal '23. So they include the Historical Commission has asked for funding of $12,500 in their budget because they're looking to apply for a grant that's this year, and it would be their 50% match towards that. So that would be specifically for that purpose. The town manager expense, I don't have actual estimates, but looking to do a climate survey. I put in 15,000 for funding for that, into that line. The Assessors Administration have been discussing their data collection expenses. Those were unanticipated when we put together the budget last year, that is necessary to fulfill our reval. And the high estimate is 60,000 at this point, but I'll know by this week a better number for that. It would be no more than that amount. And the planning board, the APDC, they've missed last couple of years asking for funding for expenses for a line item budget. So that is for administrative expenses for them in the planning board's budget. So that totals 92,500 out of an available 262,500. There's other budget adjustments, including the cherry sheet offset numbers, the cherry state assessment numbers, and on the revenue side, the cherry sheet numbers, as well as an estimated change in new growth of $22,479. The prior year expenses, which would be the second article on the town meeting warrant, that total is $1,804.54. So that would also come out of that total available amount to appropriate of $262,500. So that leaves a balance of $168,636.38 of available money to appropriate, and which my recommendation would be to put in the special purpose stabilization account, which is another article in the town meeting warrant.
Those all seem pretty fair, Heather. Thank you.
I think that should be all the updates. So we're down with the AC project being withdrawn, I think we're down to 15 articles.
Good.
And next week, I think the Park Commission article, we'll have to discuss that.
When is the latest that we need
Next Tuesday is when.
All recommendations for printing by next week.
Right, and the Finance Committee, their public hearing is Thursday, this Thursday. For their
Stealing my thunder in committee
So
reports.
sorry. Didn't have a town manager report. I gotta report something.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather.
Did you want to, there are some documents related to the other citizens petition. Did you want to?
Please.
Okay. They weren't able to be here tonight.
And this is from, is this Deb Kristen?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
They have documentation or just the signatures?
This,
They have reasons for changing the.
Yeah, I read those.
Oh, okay, that's
And they have the signatures too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me shut up.
So the citizens petition is looking to change the bylaw from the annual town meeting from the first Saturday in May to the first Saturday in April, and the annual town election to the third Saturday in May to the third Saturday in April. And their reasoning is that the month of May has many activities happening around town that can conflict with people taking the time from their other obligations to town meeting. Many events happen during this month, such as graduations, weddings, recitals, etc. The warmer weather often sees people outside getting ready for their spring activities, cleaning up winter debris, readying their gardens, etc. Baseball, softball, and soccer are among many activities that people are involved in at this time. And they now have the bylaw that calls for the special town meeting in the fall, where any adjustments to the town's budget can be discussed and voted upon. The majority of people signing this petition felt we would have more participation of town meeting moved back to April. What I did, I asked Aline to do is put together a budget calendar that shows what that actual change would look like and how those dates affect our whole calendar. Basically, starting with capital planning process is one of our and when special town meeting is called. And essentially it condenses a lot of our budget activities to the, right now is when we're, so for instance, the capital planning, they would need to issue requests in August. The forms would be due at the beginning of September, and they begin that process the mid-September, and finalize that by the around special town meeting time in order to meet all these timelines. So we it'd be really pushing the calendar 5 weeks ahead of schedule.
Okay. So the request, just to summarize, the request basically is coming, has the town clerk provided any comment or feedback on this?
She, when asked who the petitioner was, Deb Christian is the petition or main petitioner of this.
Yeah. I don't want to assume the town clerk is in agreement, but I want to assume that. But do you know if the town clerk's in agreement?
I do not.
All right. I know it's reasonable to assume that she must be, right? Okay. I'd like to get some clarification from the town clerk on the impact to her before next week, so I can reach out to her and ask.
And what, in agreement with what?
The impact.
Petition. Oh, the impact, I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, if she's, in agreement with the change to first weekend of April. I mean, other towns do it. I think Shirley does theirs in first week of April. I mean, I'm not in.
Personally,
Well,
I
I'm
am
just-
opposed to
if-
this.
Yeah.
I'll put that,
So what
the main
happens when
impact
it
is
falls
budget
the day
Yes.
before Easter? Like,
Say again?
when it falls the day before Easter?
Yeah, awful.
Right.
Yeah,
It
Easter
will, and it
weekend.
will.
Yeah.
Um,
It would definitely hit Easter weekend.
Yeah, it will, at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sorry, AIRS does theirs on a weekday, not on.
Right, on an evening,
No.
an evening weekday.
Yeah,
That's when a
evening
lot
weekday.
of people do theirs, on an
Yeah.
evening
The
weekday.
other-
And they're shorter.
If the impetus to me is to, as what they state in what was written, is to get more attendance, I think there is absolutely no evidence that if we had it earlier, it would be more attended. I don't see any evidence that that would happen. Now, so you could argue, well, you'd have to change it to see, but I don't see that. And the negatives would be that, we'd be starting to prepare budgets in Christmas and get things on. And the further away we get from the state passing a budget, the less certain. I mean, it's never certain anyway, because the state doesn't pass until July, but you're even doing more guesswork, and you're going to be doing more fix-up work at special town meeting, which is going to lengthen town meeting in the fall. So to me, the benefit, there is no real benefits to this, and I am opposed to the article.
One major thing, so the preliminary budget would have to be done prior to the governor even releasing his budget proposal. So that's where our foundation starts. We always, our foundation for state aid is always the governor's budget.
And I guess one last note I would say is that, I understand all these other events that are happening, but attending town meeting is one day in the spring, and it's a choice. I mean, you either choose to attend because it's important, or there are other things that are more important. I don't think, wherever you put it, there's going to be things that are more important that people aren't going to attend just the same. I think the argument would be the same.
I completely agree
You completely agree.
with Tom on that. Imagine that.
Mark it down.
Write it down, right?
All right. Any other thoughts on this at this juncture?
Just to pile on, I mean, with all the negatives of moving it stated, there would have to be a super compelling case that moving it to April would substantially increase attendance to outweigh those negatives, and the evidence just isn't there, as you say. So that puts me in the category of
I'm not familiar with the petitioner either. Is she very active in town?
Yes.
A lot of people we know are on this thing, but that doesn't mean they support the underlying idea. We've had that discussion. I signed these.
You've had that discussion.
Yes, right.
Yes, every meeting. Like,
Every single
Your
one.
name is probably on there.
Yeah, I am.
Did she knock on your door
By the
because
way,
she knew?
I am here, and I think this is an absolutely horrible idea.
But I support your right to bring it up in town meeting.
And we'll defend to the death.
That it will not take.
Any thoughts, Mr. Dwyer?
I think everybody's got it covered. Personally, it doesn't matter to me if town meeting's in April or May or June. I'll show up.
Yeah,
I will show
I'm-
up as long as it's not my anniversary
I'm
in
probably
April.
equally ambivalent in the sense of, I don't think, for me, it doesn't make a difference if it's in April
not happening.
or if it's in May. Personally, as far as attendance goes, I know other communities do it and other communities find ways to make just adjustments. But I hear everything Heather's saying, and I cannot deny that I think that it's problematic. I mean, I think giving, since our fiscal year ends at the end of June, I already think that it's kind of like challenging to get to the end of the fiscal year as it is, from town meeting to the end. And I think, trying to estimate what we're doing that far in advance, I do see a lot of challenges that are going to come from the change. I'm not quite clear how other communities are able to do it in April. And then also, I feel really strongly about my faith, and so anything that comes close to interfering with,
Easter?
Easter, which is
Yeah,
like
not
the
happening.
foundation of the faith, is really problematic for me. So, but generally, I'll be at either one of them. Doesn't personally matter, but I do hear what the town manager is saying, and I think in this role, I have a responsibility to support our town manager who cannot vote.
Well, if it was for personal reasons, I would vote to put it in April, because I have been there on my wife's birthday, and I have been there on my anniversary. Both.
Oh, in May?
Yes, they're both in May, and I've been at town meeting during both of those. So, for personal reasons, sure, I think April
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah, I've been at a town meeting on my birthday as well, a real long one. The only thing I would not attend a town meeting for is an Iron Maiden concert. That's the only reason I would miss a town meeting.
You gotta stand.
Okay.
I don't even know what that is.
Iron Maiden.
I don't even know what that is. What's Iron?
It's a group. Google it. Google it. It's heavy metal. You can picture him with his long hair.
Obviously,
in
Mr.
the 80s.
Jeffries has all their albums.
Clearly, yeah. Sitting on the shelf next to
I
the
don't listen to them,
Temptations,
but
right?
I know. I just can't picture Lou going.
Next Monday.
I didn't even know who the
Miss
Beatles
Lou,
were
are you
until I
wearing
moved
that
to
flannel to
Lunenburg.
the Iron Maiden?
Yikes.
I'm wearing my
That was not played in my house.
There you go.
All right.
Next Monday night.
Eddie.
Okay. Current business, approval of minutes from September the 20th. Do we have them here tonight? What is that? What is that? No. Do we
That's
have,
the thank you letter for Mr. Beardmore.
do we have the minutes?
I don't think Leanne's in the desk. I think she sent them around.
She did. All right. Has everyone had the chance to review the minutes from September 20th? And if so, is there a motion to approve?
I was not present, so I will not make that motion.
I move to approve the minutes of September 20th, 2022 as presented.
I'll
Second.
Oh, then I'll let Lou can second.
I thought I heard Heather.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Minutes
And
are.
abstained, just for the record.
Thank you. There was one abstention. Motion passes 4-1, 4-0 with one abstention. All right. Warrant articles, and while we're doing warrants, let's just go through the warrants. All right, payroll deductions in the amount of $651,000, $576.63. Thank you, Heather. We have an accounts payable warrant. Ooh, this is a big one. In the amount of $1,449,216. I didn't say that correctly. In the amount of $1,449,216.52.
Is some bond being paid off or something?
Yeah.
At this point?
1.4 million.
1.4 million.
Pretty big chunk at once. Payroll warrant. Well, we can always open it and look.
Crazy pen.
Payroll warrant in the amount of $976,463.21. In addition to the warrants, I'm also passing down for our signature Oh, see, this is just for me to sign, so do you have a black pen?
It's black.
Thank you. And this is a letter of acknowledgement from Mr. Beardmore, thanking him for his years of service on Finance Committee.
Finance, I was gonna say, isn't he still serving?
Yeah. We also have, did this come from you or you?
Not from me.
It's in the mail. It's regarding the Christmas Angel program.
We're kind of early for that. All right, so we received a letter from the Salvation Army. I'll just go ahead and read it into the, actually, Mr. Franco.
Yes.
Would you mind just reading that into the record?
All right. Salvation Army, October 2022. Dear friends, as the air cools and the leaves blanket the ground, we are reminded that soon snow will be falling. Christmas music will be playing, and shoppers will be searching for that perfect gift. At the Salvation Army, we are shining bells and polishing kettles as we prepare for our Red Kettle campaign. We are still in need of folks like you, warm-hearted with big smiles, who want to help ensure that the neediest members of our community have a wonderful Christmas holiday. We are extending our hand to you in hope that you would consider partnering with the Salvation Army to help assist hundreds of families in Fitchburg, Leominster, and Lunenburg. We are hoping you, family members, friends, co-workers, clubs, or organizations will be able to stand at a kettle and ring a bell as you thank donors and wish each passerby a Merry Christmas. Or to make it even more exciting, you could challenge someone else to see who can raise the most. If you are interested in adopting a family, obtaining angel tags, or other opportunities offered during the holiday season, if you have any questions, please call me at 978-342-3300. Thank you for your willingness to assist those in need. May God bless you and your family. Blessings. Envoy Lynette Valentine Warren.
All right, thank you. And so we typically do the tree every year. Are we doing one this year as well?
We plan on.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you to Lynette. She's, we work together every year in the Memorial Day program. She's always very supportive to the community, especially those who find themselves in need. So, all right. Action items. Do we have any action items?
I do have one. It was, somebody had inquired on social media, and I saw the post, so I just thought I would bring it up. So do we have any idea, number one, is the weather vane that we're having built to replace the one that went missing, is that done? And what is the plan for installing it?
We do have the weather vane.
Okay.
It's been up in the attic.
Okay.
And the specifications for the town hall work that was included in the Vertex is part of the bid package for the tower, to repair the tower and install the refurbished or new weather.
So is that out to bid now, or is it not even been done?
It's not out to bid yet.
So we have it, but it's not gonna be done until the tower is...
We didn't get the funding for that project until, well, that was one of the CTA's applications that we recently received approval for from.
Oh, okay, so it's
APDC.
underway, we just haven't put it out to bid yet?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
If I may, through the chair to the town manager, seems like a logical place to bring this up because it reminded me of it. Maybe tell me if it's not logical, but there's, because since we're talking about the tower, there's the screening up there that needs to be fastened to the openings. Is that part of the tower work?
That's going to be, that's something the facilities director is working on
Okay.
as well, to get that screening.
All right, yeah, there's a whole lot of animal.
That's part of,
dropping something.
the approach to help eliminate our animal problem here.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Any other action items? I have a question. Is there a simple way to know which holidays trash is picked up on and which ones it's not?
You can look it
It's
up
on the town website.
on the website. Let's talk. I just pulled it up earlier.
So,
You just write in Lunenburg, Mass trash.
all right, so there is a master-like list
Yeah.
that has like
The
a
holiday
calendar?
list.
Okay.
It's
All
right
right,
there.
so that answers that question.
They're picking it up tomorrow, the regular time this week.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
very
I
few-
figured
Columbus
that
Day
out.
isn't one of their holidays.
No,
Very
yeah,
few holidays.
I figured that out on Monday afternoon. Monday's my trash day.
That's all you write.
I made the same mistake.
Yeah.
Comes right up.
Yeah. So, okay, so the trick is to go to the town website. What's the
No,
keyword?
I just write Lunenburg, Mass trash, and it will just pull up the trash schedule.
Perfect.
You don't even have to go to the town website. You
Google
just
Lunenburg
it.
trash.
Lunenburg, Mass trash.
Got it. All right.
Otherwise you get Lunenburg.
Or go to
Totally
the
get a different Lunenburg.
DPW's page on the website.
Yeah,
and
it's
find it
there.
for that page.
Okay.
And it's not that hard to find.
Yep. So, all right, that's apparently where the information is. That has eluded me for years. Committee, say again?
Did you miss your trash pickup?
I'm not the one who does trash in my house. So, the answer is yes. The other person is.
The boss.
All right, committee reports.
School committee had a meeting last week. They also had their meet and greet for the AD and their facilities director, and I was the only public person there. Even though they sent out emails to all parents, I was the only extra person in attendance. And then Kathy came up too, town clerk. So not a lot of people participated, and when I asked people about it, if they said they were unaware that it was even happening, even though she did send out an email. Okay, so we're back to that. People they're gonna show up or they're not, and they aren't gonna read emails or they're not. They did work on her goals. I believe they're posted on the website. And they did talk about Turkey Hill a bit about it and the need for a new building project. So they'll be pushing that a little bit. They're working on that. And they did talk about, I don't know if they talked about their capital plan again. But all of those things are found on their website. Everything is posted. They had the principals on briefly, and their school improvement plans are also up on the website.
Excellent.
Okay?
Thank you.
And I guess the next one will be next week. The next school committee meeting, yeah.
I will be there. Any other committee reports?
I have none.
Yes, Council on Aging, which I was originally not going to be able to attend, but we made it happen, and I was only able to attend the first hour of it, and the council was nice enough to totally shift their schedule around so that they could present to me there and to their whole council the finance report that was prepared and presented rather by Sue Doherty, and I'm not going to get into any specifics, but I do want to say that it was eye-opening for me and clarifying in a lot of ways, because now I understand a lot better about what the expenses are, where the revenues come from, and I certainly, I'm not going to speak to any specifics. I don't want to get out in front of anybody in terms of presenting needs or asks, but I will say that having seen what I saw today definitely will change my view on Council on Aging requests and how I speak to them and view them as we debate them here to the extent applicable.
I have a question for you. This board traditionally is always very favorable to the Council of Aging, and with all of their requests, there aren't many requests.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there any? I know you don't want to get ahead of anything, so I don't want to put you in a comfortable position. But is there any insight you can provide us into as far as what requests?
I don't want to get out in front of anybody because I know that they're going to be speaking to this, and probably town managers are going to be speaking to it as well. But there are just certain, in my takeaway on this, my impression, certain core needs that are relying on sources of funding that are not guaranteed, that, maybe should be a little more guaranteed.
Got it. I follow you. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I had that same kind of eye-opening experience in my budget meeting with the library committee, in which I found out that there were donated funds for building repairs. And I think sometimes it's a little bit more drilling into things to understand the whys. And I think as we drilled into that one, it was more clear to me that was probably more related to expedience than anything in that instance. So it's always helpful. I look forward to the Council of Aging providing some more information to us, because I think we all have said as a priority for ourselves is that supporting the senior community in this town really matters a lot, and we want to do the most we can to be supportive to the senior community. I know that there's a lot of interest in them increasing their visibility, so that's going to all be really good.
Officially being part of the senior community, I guess.
Are you?
Yeah.
Apparently,
I don't know. It depends on what the age category is, but certainly come February, I think officially will be part of that. So, I attended with the town manager the APDC meeting on Thursday, where one of the items they discussed was not only the bylaw, we discussed that this evening, their warrant article, but also we discussed the certificate to alter for the Ritter and the denial of the windows, and we had a very good and constructive discussion about their position and what they're looking for and what they felt that wasn't provided to them to make a decision other than the one they made. In attendance was Paul Visconti, our facilities director, who presented, again, a very good perspective from his position. And I think that the next, they did feel on the request to waive the end of the process, that they felt that they didn't have, there's no mechanism in the bylaw or their regulations to say, okay, we're suspending the decision and extending it. But they also said that any resubmittal to them, we had commitments, although they didn't vote as a committee, a commitment from some of the individual members that they would fast track this, knowing what the urgency was. But they did want to see options of what they had requested. After hearing their arguments and hearing from everybody who was in there, town manager spoke and the facilities director spoke, and I participated as long as the members. I think what they're asking for is not unreasonable for us to provide to help make a decision, and that is what the cost would be for a renovation of those windows. And we had some discussion about, longevity of the windows and energy efficiency of the windows that are there compared to newer ones, and what that would entail too, and what the detriment is to replacing windows, and we got into a discussion with that. So again, I think it was very positive, and I think the facilities director is going to be looking at having somebody come up with options about what it would be to restore the windows. What?
Both options.
Both options, right. So capital planning committee meets on Monday, an agenda tomorrow to post. Well, actually, I owe the town clerk an agenda, but I need your assistance because I need to know the Zoom manager, because I need to get a Zoom meeting together. But that's going to be Monday at the Ritter Building, lower level. It will be on Zoom, and that's at 6 p.m. on Monday. And FinCom this Thursday, 2 days from today, has their public hearing on the special town meeting warrant articles, and that begins at 7 p.m.
All right. Thank you. I don't have any committee reports today.
We just had your whole committee, right?
I know, we have them here, so I don't have any committee reports today. All right, for our upcoming meeting schedule, so this Saturday, we have a site visit, and this is on October the 15th. This site visit is in the center of town area. So I'll reach out to specify where we're meeting at, but it's generally going to be the
first location.
Yeah, it was the first location on the list. So they're
I
in
am
order.
not going to be able to go now.
What
So
is
they are in order as far as what
Okay.
we're going to do.
on the list? What list? What list are we talking
It
about?
was in last week's meeting.
Oh, what
Document.
was supposed to be Wednesday?
No.
No, there's a Saturday one
Second one
on
this
that
Saturday.
same.
Okay, is it posted? I mean,
I think it was in that same I thought it
Probably-
was.
Probably already posted.
Yeah, so it's already posted, and then we also have, in our Google Drive from last week, it should be in there from last week.
And what time is it, 9 a.m.?
I believe it's 10.
10, oh, thank God.
Yep. I remember you saying.
Yeah, 9 a.m. is.
So, yeah, so 10 o'clock, it should be about 90 minutes or less. And the intent is for the select board to meet, to walk some of the properties that is under the care and custody of the select board in the center of town, just to do a property inspection. So the 3 properties are 104 Fairview Road, 247 Highland Street rear, and 1249 Mass Ave rear. And the intent is to, again, walk the property, conduct somewhat of an inspection, and then also just to start the process of identifying future disposition of property, so that we are intentionally, kind of holding some property for future schools or whatever, just to kind of work through what the plan is and why we have the property, or et cetera. And then October 18th is another select board meeting. This will continue the trend of October of roughly 3-hour-long meetings, and they will stop once we get into November. And we'll get back into our normal 2-hour kind of rhythm once we get into November. So I know this is this month intentionally, as we started it, I think I came into it saying there's going to be some long meetings, but we'll be out of them pretty soon. Next week is also a workshop. It's basically a policy workshop to pick up on a lot of the policies that we postponed for the last 2 weeks because of the time that we allocated.
Wait, when's
for
the policy workshop?
Next Tuesday. Are you telling me you're not here?
No, I am. Depends on the baseball schedule.
All right, next Tuesday. And then we have our meetings in November on the 1st, the 8th, 15th is a special town meeting, and right now we have the 22nd noted tentatively. The plan is to have an abbreviated meeting if one is necessary, or to cancel that meeting altogether. We are not going to be going into executive session tonight, as we will be postponing that till next week as we're waiting for more information. So are there any public comments this evening from the public? I'm going to pause. I do see we have some people with us tonight. Any public comments from the public? All right.
Somebody's raising hand, yeah.
There we go.
The phone number.
All right. What is this here recording?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, this is Rhonda Licio at 181 Reservoir Road.
Hey, Rhonda.
I just wanted to comment, that the viewers at home were unable to read the options presented by the Municipal Design Committee. So I'm just hoping that those could be made available somewhere
Hey,
for any member of the public.
Hey, Rhonda, I will, we apologize for that. The intent tonight was to present them in a PowerPoint a little larger, and our presenter was held up in traffic. So we can add them to the town website. We'll send them to the town manager, which already has them. We'll add them to the town website underneath Municipal Building Design Committee. So we'll put the concepts there.
Okay.
Thanks
That
for
would
that.
be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Good night.
Do you need me to send you an email about that? Okay. Any other public comments this evening from the public? All right. Any public comments from the town manager?
No.
And from the board? No? Hey, thank you guys. I have a public comment tonight. I want to, just speaking to you guys as colleagues, I know that these meetings are long and challenging to get through. And I'm really appreciative of this board and how well that we're able to work together. I know this is a lot of work for all of us, but it's personally, I really enjoy working with you guys. So thank you for the work you guys do for the town. I really think we're making some good progress. I know being a member of this board, I haven't always felt that way. But I think we're making some good progress. That's not a slight to you at all, Tom. We had some challenging times. But I think I really enjoy working with you guys. I just want to thank you guys. Also, as we look around the town and we see a lot of the volunteers, a lot of them are people that we have actively recruited to help get involved. And so, I know it goes beyond just these meetings. It's your personal lives, it's a sacrifice from your families. So, thank you guys. And thank you as well, Heather. I know this is, it's the job you chose, but I know it still is, it still is a sacrifice in many ways for your family. You have kids, so thank you as well.
If I could just add and say that feeling is very much reciprocated to all members here, so it should.
It is. All right, is there?
Just so you know, I couldn't find the list of the properties in that Google Drive.
Okay, I'll get them to
Maybe
you.
we can, yeah, okay.
All right. They're also on the town calendar.
Okay.
All right.
This probably doesn't count as.
Yeah, go ahead. What
agenda's on there.
But
Oh, okay.
public question. Well, it's a question from me. What is the initial meeting spot on Saturday? That's 104?
Yeah, it's the first property. So,
Okay.
So how you get there is basically when you come down the center of town on Leominster Road.
I know
and-
Fairview.
And you get to Fairview, which is the fork. And you're going all the way kind of up that hill.
Yeah.
And then you're
New
gonna,
house,
excuse me?
to the beautiful new house.
There is a beautiful new house down there. We're gonna have to park kind of roadside. Our property is at the is at that driveway.
Okay.
So it's the space between the new house from Chapter Lane and.
Is this the Woodruff Farm?
Yes, the Woodruff Farm.
Do we
It's
have
next to.
access- Is there really public access?
There's no, we have, along the main road, we have a large access strip of about, I think, 50 feet
No,
or
I
so.
know, so along the main road, meaning Leominster Road?
No.
Excuse me,
No.
on Fairview.
On Fairview, so we do
Yeah,
have
we
access.
have to
on
We
go
do have
all the
access
way
on
up.
Fairview. We also have access near the, on Leominster Road behind the pump station. So there's also, that's the secondary access. That's how the farmers come in.
This property abuts my house, I could just walk across my other, back into my property.
Yeah, it's a huge parcel. So that's the first location. All right. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion? No. All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, the time is now 10:20. We are adjourned. To those at home who toughed it out, thank you for joining us tonight, and we will see you here next week at the same time. Have a good night.